The Hymns of Orpheus. By Thomas Taylor. Preface. There is doubtless a revolution in the literary, correspondent to that of the natural world. The face of things is continually changing, and the perfect and perpetual harmony of the universe subsists by the mutability of its parts. In consequence of this fluctuation, different arts and sciences have flourished at different periods of the world, but the complete circle of human knowledge has, I believe, never subsisted at once, in any nation or age. Where accurate and profound researches into the principles of things have advanced to perfection, there, by a natural consequence, men have neglected the disquisition of particulars, and where sensible particulars have been the general object of pursuit, the science of universals has languished or sunk into oblivion and contempt. Thus wisdom, the object of all true philosophy, considered as exploring the causes and principles of things, flourished in high perfection among the Egyptians first, and afterwards in Greece. Polite literature was the pursuit of the Romans. And experimental inquiries, increased without end, and accumulated without order, are the employment of modern philosophy. Hence we may justly conclude, that the age of true philosophy is no more. In consequence of very extended natural discoveries, trade and commerce have increased, while abstract investigations have necessarily declined, so that modern inquiries never rise above sense. And everything is despised, which does not in some respect or other contribute to the accumulation of wealth, the gratification of childish admiration, or the refinements of corporeal delight. The author of the following translation, therefore, cannot reasonably expect that his labors will meet with the approbation of the many, since these hymns are too ancient, and too full of the Greek philosophy, to please the ignorant and the sordid. However, he hopes they will be acceptable to the few, who have drawn wisdom from its source, and who consider the science of universals, as first in the nature of things, though last in the progressions of human understanding. The translator has adopted rhyme, not because most agreeable to general taste, but because he believes it necessary to the poetry of the English language, which requires something as a substitute for the energetic cadence of the Greek and Latin hexameters. Could this be obtained by any other means, he would immediately relinquish his partiality for rhyme, which is certainly, when well executed, far more difficult than blank verse, as the following hymns must evince, in an eminent degree. And, here it is necessary to observe, with respect to translation, that nothing is more generally mistaken in its nature, or more faulty in its execution. The author of the Letters on Mythology gives it as his opinion, that it is impossible to translate an ancient author, so as to do justice to his meaning. If he had confined this sentiment to the beauties of the composition, it would doubtless have been just, but to extend it to the meaning of an author, is to make truth and opinion partial and incommunicable. Every person, indeed, acquainted with the learned languages, must be conscious how much the beauty of an ancient author generally suffers by translation, though undertaken by men who have devoted the greatest part of their lives to the study of words alone. This failure, which has more than anything contributed to bring the ancients into contempt with the unlearned, can only be ascribed to the want of genius in the translators, for the sentiment of Pythagoras is peculiarly applicable to such as these, that many carry the thyrsus, but few are inspired with the spirit of the god. But this observation is remarkably verified in the translators of the ancient philosophy, whose performances are for the most part without animation, and consequently retain nothing of the fire and spirit of the original. Perhaps there is but one exception to this remark, and that is Mr. Sydenham, whose success in such an arduous undertaking can only be ascribed to his possessing the philosophical genius, and to his occasionally paraphrasing passages, which would otherwise be senseless and inanimate. Indeed, where languages differ so much as the ancient and modern, the most perfect method, perhaps, of transferring the philosophy from the one language to the other, is by a faithful and animated paraphrase, faithful with regard to retaining the sense of the author, and animated with respect to preserving the fire of the original, calling it forth when latent, and expanding it when condensed. Such a one will everywhere endeavor to improve the light, and fathom the depth of his author, to elucidate what is obscure, and to amplify what in modern language would he unintelligibly concise. Thus most of the compound epithets of which the following hymns chiefly consist, though very beautiful in the Greek language, yet when literally translated into ours, lose all their propriety and force. In their native tongue, as in a prolific soil, they diffuse their sweets with full-blown elegance, but shrink like the sensitive plant at the touch of the verbal critic, or the close translator. He who would preserve their philosophical beauties, and exhibit them to others in a different language, must expand their elegance, by the supervening and enlivening rays of the philosophic fire. And, by the powerful breath of genius, scatter abroad their latent but copious sweets. If some sparks of this celestial fire shall appear to have animated the bosom of the translator, he will consider himself as well rewarded, for his laborious undertaking. The ancient philosophy has been for many years, the only study of his retired leisure, in which he has found an inexhaustible treasure of intellectual wealth, and a perpetual fountain of wisdom and delight. Presuming that such a pursuit must greatly advantage the present undertaking, and feeling the most sovereign contempt for the sordid drudgery of hired composition, he desires no other reward, if he has succeeded, than the praise of the liberal, and no other defense if he has failed, than the decision of the candid, and discerning few. How do you find this book? Any thoughts about the book or the author? Any suggestion for improvement? Please take a moment to share your thoughts in a comment. If you like it, share it with your friends who might enjoy it as well. Subscribe to keep in touch. Visit CompleteAudiobooks.com for more quality content. A Dissertation on the Life and Theology of Orpheus. Section 1. The great obscurity and uncertainty in which the history of Orpheus is involved, affords very little matter for our information, and even renders that little, inaccurate and precarious. Upon surveying the annals of past ages, it seems that the greatest geniuses have been subject to this historical darkness, as is evident in those great lights of antiquity, Homer and Euclid, whose writings indeed enrich mankind with perpetual stores of knowledge and delight, but whose lives are for the most part concealed in impenetrable oblivion. But this historical uncertainty is nowhere so apparent, as in the person of Orpheus, whose name is indeed acknowledged and celebrated by all antiquity, except perhaps Aristotle alone, while scarcely a vestige of his life is to be found amongst the immense ruins of time. For who has ever been able to affirm anything with certainty, concerning his origin, his age, his parents, his country, and condition? This alone may be depended on, from general assent, that there formerly lived a person named Orpheus, whose father was Aeagrus, who lived in Thrace, and who was the son of a king, who was the founder of theology, among the Greeks, the institutor of their life and morals, the first of prophets, and the prince of poets, himself the offspring of a muse, who taught the Greeks their sacred rites and mysteries, and from whose wisdom, as from a perpetual and abundant fountain, the divine muse of Homer, and the philosophy of Pythagoras, and Plato, flowed. And, lastly, who by the melody of his lyre, drew rocks, woods, and wild beasts, stopped rivers in their course, and ever, moved the inexorable king of hell, as every page, and all the writings of antiquity sufficiently evince. Since thus much then may be collected from universal testimony, let us pursue the matter a little farther, by investigating more accurately the history of the original Orpheus, with that of the great men who have, at different periods, flourished under this venerable name. The first and genuine Orpheus was a poet of Thrace, and, according to the opinion of many, the disciple of Linus, who flourished, says Suidas, at the time when the kingdom of the Athenians was dissolved. Some assert that he was prior to the Trojan Wars, and that he lived 11, or according to others 9 generations. But the Greek word gamma epsilon nu epsilon alpha, or generation, according to Giraldus 1, signifies the space of 7 years, for unless this is supposed, how is it possible that the period of his life can have any foundation in the nature of things? Plutarch indeed, Heraclitus, Suidas, and some grammarians, assert that this word signifies a space of 30 years, but omitting the discussion of this latter opinion, from its impossibility, we shall embrace the former, agreeable to which Orpheus lived 63 years. A period, if we may believe the astrologers fatal to all, and especially to great men, as was the case with Cicero and Aristotle. Our poet, according to fabulous tradition, was torn in pieces by Ciconian women, on which account, Plutarch affirms the Thracians were accustomed to beat their wives, that they might revenge the death of Orpheus. Hence, in the vision of Hyrus Pamphilius, in Plato, the soul of Orpheus, being destined to descend into another body, is reported to have chosen rather that of a swan than to be born again of a woman. Having conceived such hatred against the sex, on account of his violent death. The cause of his destruction is variously related by authors. Some report that it arose from his being engaged in puerile loves, after the death of Eurydice. Others, that he was destroyed by women intoxicated with wine, because he was the means of men relinquishing their connection. Others affirm, according to the tradition of Pausanias, that upon the death of Eurydice, wandering to Aornus, a place in Thesprotia, where it was customary to evocate the souls of the dead, having recalled Eurydice to life. And not being able to detain her, he destroyed himself. Nightingales building their nests, and bringing forth their young upon his tomb, whose melody, according to report, exceeded every other of this species. Others again ascribe his laceration, to his having celebrated every divinity except Bacchus, which is very improbable, as among the following hymns there are 9 to that deity, under different appellations. Others report that he was delivered by Venus herself, into the hands of the Ciconian women, because his mother Calliope, had not determined justly between Venus and Proserpine, concerning the young Adonis. Many affirm that he was struck by lightning, according to Pausanias, and Diogenes confirms this by the following verses composed as he asserts, by the Muses upon his death, here, by the Muses plaqued, with golden lyre. Great Orpheus rests. Destroyed by heaven fire. Again, the sacred mysteries called Thracian, derived their appellation, from our Thracian bard, because he first introduced sacred rites and religion into Greece. And hence the authors of initiation in these mysteries, were called Orpheodolesti. Besides, according to Lucian, our Orpheus brought astrology, and the magical arts into Greece. And with respect to his drawing trees and wild beasts by the melody of his lyre, Palaephatus accounts for it as follows too. The mad Bacchanalian nymphs, says he, having violently taken away cattle and other necessaries of life, retired for some days into the mountains. When the citizens having expected their return for a long time, and fearing the worst for their wives and daughters, called Orpheus, and entreated him to invent some method of drawing them from the mountains. But he, tuning his lyre, agreeable to the orgies of Bacchus, drew the mad nymphs from their retreats, who descended from the mountains bearing at first fairly in branches of every kind of trees. But to the men who were eyewitnesses of these wonders, they appeared at first to bring down the very woods, and from hence gave rise to the fable. But so great was the reputation of Orpheus, that he was deified by the Greeks. And Philostratus relates, that his head gave oracles in Lesbos, which, when separated from his body by the Thracian women, was, together with his lyre, carried down the river Hebrus into the sea. In this manner, says Lucian 3, singing as it were his funeral oration, to which the chords of his lyre impelled by the winds, gave a responsive harmony, it was brought to Lesbos and buried. But his lyre was suspended in the temple of Apollo, where it remained for a considerable space of time. Afterwards, when Neanthus, the son of Pittacus the tyrant, found that the lyre drew trees and wild beasts with its harmony, he earnestly desired its possession. And having corrupted the priest privately with money, he took the Orphean lyre, and fixed another similar to it, in the temple. But Neanthus, considering that he was not safe in the city in the daytime, departed from it by night. Having concealed the lyre in his bosom, on which he began to play. But as he was a rude and unlearned youth, he confounded the chords. Yet pleasing himself with the sound, and fancying he produced a divine harmony, he considered himself as the blessed successor of Orpheus. However, in the midst of his transports, the neighboring dogs, roused by the sound, fell upon the unhappy harper and tore him to pieces. The former part of this fable is thus excellently explained by Proclus in his commentaries, or rather fragments of commentaries, on Plato's Republic. A work I would earnestly recommend to the liberal, for the great light it affords to the recondite theology of the Greeks. Orpheus, says he, on account of his perfect erudition, is reported to have been destroyed in various ways. Because, in my opinion, men of that age, participated partially of the Orphic harmony, for they could not receive a universal and perfect science. But the principal part of his melody was received by the Lesbians. And on this account, perhaps, the head of Orpheus, when separate from his body, is said to have been carried to Lesbos. Fables of this kind, therefore, are related of Orpheus, no otherwise than of Bacchus, of whose mysteries he was the priest. Thus far Proclus, and thus much concerning the first, or Thracian Orpheus. The second Orpheus was an Arcadian, or, according to others, a Ciconian, from Bisaltia of Thrace, and is reported to be more ancient than Homer, and the Trojan War. He composed figments of fables called mu upsilon theta omicron pi omicron iota alpha, and epigrams, and is, according to Giraldus, the author of the following hymns. Though I rather choose to refer them, with the fathers Vossius and Eschenbach, to Onomacritus, or the fourth Orpheus, of Crotonia. The third Orpheus was of Odrygius, a city of Thrace, near the river Hebrus. But Dionysius, in Suedas, denies his existence. The fourth Orpheus was of Crotonia, who flourished in the time of Pisistratus, about the 50th Olympiad, and is doubtless the same Onomacritus the author of these hymns. He writ Decinalia, delta epsilon kappa alpha epsilon tau eta rho iota alpha, and, in the opinion of Giraldus, the Argonautics, which are now extant under the name of Orpheus, with other writings called Orphical, but which, according to Cicer, some ascribe to Cecrops the Pythagorean. The last Orpheus, was Camerinius, a most excellent versifier, and the same according to Giraldus whose descent into hell is so universally known. And thus much for the life of Orpheus. Section 2. Let us now proceed to his theology. Exchanging the obscurity of conjecture for the light of clear evidence, and the intricate labyrinths of fable for the delightful though solitary paths of truth. And here I must acquaint the reader, that I shall everywhere deduce my information from the writings of the latter Platonists, as the only sources of genuine knowledge, on this sublime and obsolete inquiry. 5. The vulgar systems of mythology are here entirely useless. And he who should attempt to elucidate the theology, or hymns of Orpheus, by any modern hypothesis, would be as ridiculously employed, as he who should expect to find the origin of a copious stream, by pursuing it to its last and most intricate involutions. In conformity with modern prejudices, the author of the Letters on Mythology, endeavors to prove, that the Orphic hymns deify the various parts of nature, not considered as animated by different intelligences but as various modifications of inert and lifeless matter. This hypothesis is no doubt readily embraced by the present philosophers, a great part of whom deny the existence of anything incorporeal. And the better sort, who acknowledge one supreme immaterial being, exclude the agency of subordinate intelligences in the government of the world, though this doctrine is perfectly philosophical, and at the same time consistent with revelation. The belief indeed of the man, who looks no higher than sense, must be necessarily terminated by appearances. Such a one introduces a dreadful chasm in the universe, and diffuses the deity through the world like an extended substance, divided with every particle of matter, and changed into the infinite varieties of sensible forms. But with the ancient philosopher, the deity is an immense and perpetually exuberant fountain, whose streams originally filled and continually replenished the world with life. Hence the universe contains in its ample bosom all general natures, divinities visible and invisible, the illustrious race of demons, the noble army of exalted souls, and men rendered happy by wisdom and virtue. According to this theology, the power of universal soul does not alone diffuse itself to the sea, and become bounded by its circumfluent waters, while the wide expanse of air and ether is destitute of life and soul. But the celestial spaces are filled with souls, supplying life to the stars, and directing their revolutions in everlasting order. So that the celestial orbs in imitation of intellect, which seeks after nothing external, are wifely agitated in perpetual circuit round the central sun. While some things participate of being alone, others of life, and others are endued with sentient powers, some possess the still higher faculty of reason, and lastly others, are all life and intelligence. But let us rise a little higher, and contemplate the arguments by which the Platonists established the Orphic doctrine of the existence and agency of subordinate intelligences. Thus then they reason 6, of all beings it is necessary that some should move only, that others should be entirely moved, and that the beings situated between these two should participate of the extremes, and both move and be moved. Among the first in dignity and order are those natures which move only, the second, those which move themselves, the third, those which move and are moved, and the fourth, those which are moved only. Now the second class of these, or the self-motive natures, since their perfection consists in transition and mutation of life, must depend upon a more ancient cause, which subsists perpetually the same, and whose life is not conversant with the circulations of time, but is constituted in the stable essence of eternity. But it is necessary that the third class, which both move and are moved, should depend on a self-motive nature. For a self-motive being is the cause of motion to those which are moved by another, in the same manner as that which is immovable inserts in all beings the power of moving. And again, that which is moved only must depend on those natures, which are indeed moved by another, but which are themselves endued with a motive power. For it is necessary that the chain of beings should be complete, everywhere connected by proper mediums, and deduced in an orderly and perpetual series, from the principle to the extremes. All bodies therefore belong to those natures which are moved only, and are naturally passive. Since they are destitute of all inherent energy, on account of their sluggish nature, which participates of division, magnitude, and weight. But of incorporeal some are divisible about bodies, while others are entirely free from such an affection about the lowest order of beings. Hence such things, as are divided about the dead weight of bodies, whether they are material qualities or forms, belong to the orders of natures moving, and at the same time moved. For such as these, because incorporeal, participate of a motive faculty, but because they are also divided about bodies, they are on this account exempt from incorporeal perfection, are filled with material inactivity, and require the energy of a self-motive nature. Where then shall we find this self-motive essence? For such things as are extended with magnitude, oppressed by material weight, and inseparably reside in bodies, must necessarily either move only, or be moved by others. But it is requisite, as we have before observed, that prior to this order, the self-motive essence should subsist. And hence we conclude that there is another certain nature exempt from the passivity and imperfection of bodies, existing not only in the heavens, but in the ever-changing elements, from which the motion of bodies is primarily derived. And this nature is no other than soul, from which animals derive their life and motive power, and which even affords an image of self-motion to the unstable order of bodies. If then the self-motive essence is more ancient than that which is moved by another, but soul is primarily self-motive, hence soul must be more ancient than body, and all corporeal motion must be the progeny of soul, and of her inherent energy. It is necessary, therefore, that the heavens, with all their boundless contents, and their various natural motions, for a circular motion, is natural to such bodies, should be endued with governing souls, essentially more ancient than their revolving bodies. According to the Platonic philosophers, therefore, these souls which orderly distinguish the universe and its contained parts, from their inherent cause of motion, give life and motion to every inanimate body. But it is necessary that every motive essence should either move all things rationally, or irrationally, that is, either according to the uniform and unerring laws of reason, or according to the brutal impulse of an irrational nature. But the constant order observed in the periods of the celestial bodies, the convenience of positions, and the admirable laws by which their revolutions are directed, plainly evince that their motions are governed by a rational nature. If therefore, an intellectual and rational soul governs the universe, and if everything eternally moved is under the directing influence of such a soul, may we not inquire whether it possesses this intellectual, perfect, and beneficent power, by participation, or essentially? For if essentially, it is necessary that every soul should be intellectual, since every soul is naturally self-motive. But if by participation, there must be another nature more ancient than soul, which operates entirely from energy, and whose essence is intelligence, on account of that uniform conception of universals, which it essentially contains. Because it is also necessary that the soul, essentially rational, should receive intellect by participation, and that intellectual energy should be of two kinds, one primarily subsisting in the divine intellect, but the other subsisting secondarily in its offspring soul. You may add too, the presence of intellectual illumination in body, which is received in as great perfection as its unstable and obscure nature will admit. For how is it possible that the celestial orbs should be forever circularly moved in one definite order, preserving the same form, and the same immutable power, unless they participated of an intellectual nature? For soul is indeed the constant supplier of motion, but the cause of perpetual station, of identity and uniform life, reducing unstable motion to a circular revolution, and to a condition eternally the same, must be more ancient than soul. Body, indeed, and whatever is the object of sense, belongs to the order of things moved by another. But soul is self-motive, embracing in itself, in a connected manner, all corporeal motions. And prior to this is immovable intellect. And here it is requisite to observe, that this immaterial nature must not be conceived as similar to anything inert, destitute of life, and endued with no spirit, but as the principal cause of all motion, and the fountain of all life. As well of that whose streams perpetually return into itself, as of that which subsists in others, and has, on this account only, a secondary and imperfect existence. All things, therefore, depend upon unity, through the medium of intellect and soul. And intellect is of an uniform essence, but soul of a mental form nu omicron epsilon iota delta sigma, and the body of the world vivific, or vital zeta omega tau iota kappa. The first cause of all is indeed prior to intellect, but intellect is the first recipient of a divine nature, and soul is divine, so far as it requires an intellectual medium. But the body which participates a soul of this kind is divine, in as great a degree as the nature of body will admit. For the illustration of intellectual light, pervades from the principle of things, to the extremes. And is not totally obscured, even when it enters the involutions of matter, and is profoundly merged in its dark and flowing receptacle. Hence we may with reason conclude, that not only the universe, but each of its eternal parts is animated, and endued with intellect, and is in its capacity similar to the universe. For each of these parts, is a universe if compared with the multitude it contains, and to which it is allied. There is, therefore, according to the Orphic and Platonic theology, one soul of the universe, and after this others, which from participating this general soul, dispose the entire parts of the universe into order. And one intellect which is participated by souls, and one supreme God, who comprehends the world in his infinite nature, and a multitude of other divinities, who distribute intellectual essences, together with their dependent souls. And all the parts of the world, and who are the perpetual sources of its order, union, and consent. For it is not reasonable to suppose that every production of nature should have the power of generating its similar, but that the universe and primary essences should not more abundantly possess an ability of such like procreation. Since sterility can only belong to the most abject, and not to the most excellent natures. In consequence of this reasoning, Orpheus filled all things with gods, subordinate to the demiurgus of the whole delta eta mu iota upsilon rho gamma, every one of which performs the office destined to his divinity, by his superior leader. Hence according to his theology there are two worlds, the intelligible and the sensible. Hence too his three demiurgic principles, jovial, dionysiacal, and adonical, delta iota hashtag, delta iota omicron nu upsilon sigma iota alpha kappa, alpha delta omega nu alpha kappa, from whence many orders and differences of gods proceed, intelligible 7, intellectual, supermundane, mundane, celestial, authors of generation. And among these some in the order of guardian, demiurgic, elevating and comprehending gods, perfecters of works, vivific, immutable, absolute, judicial, purgative, and besides these to each particular divinity, he added a particular multitude of angels, demons, and heroes. For according to Proclus, relating the opinion of Orpheus, and the theologists 8, about every god there is a kindred multitude of angels, heroes, and demons. For every god presides over the form of that multitude which receives the divinity. He likewise considered a difference of sex in these deifies, calling some male, and others female, the reason of which distinction 9 Proclus, with his usual elegance and subtlety, thus explains. The division of male and female comprehends in itself all the plenitudes of divine orders. Since the cause of stable power and identity, and the leader Chi-Rho-Eta Gamma Omicron of being, and that which invests all things with the first principle of conversion, is comprehended in the masculine order. But that which generates from itself all various progressions and partitions, measures of life and prolific powers, is contained in the female division. And on this account Timaeus also, converting himself to all the gods, by this division of generated natures, embraces their universal orders. But a division of this kind, is particularly accommodated and proper to the present theory, because the universe is full of this twofold kind of gods. For that we may begin with the extremes, heaven corresponds with earth, in the order and proportion of male to female. Since the motion of the heavens imparts particular properties and powers, to particular things. But on the other hand earth receiving the celestial defluxions, becomes pregnant, and produces plants and animals of every kind. And of the gods existing in the heavens, some are distinguished by the male division, and others by the female, and the authors of generation, since they are themselves destitute of birth, are some of this order and others of that. For the demiurgic choir is abundant in the universe. There are also many canals as it were of life, some of which exhibit the male and others the female form. But why should I insist on this particular? Since from the absolute unities, whether endued with a masculine, or a feminine form, various orders of beings flow into the universe. Thus far Proclus. But that Orpheus was a monarchist, as well as a polytheist, is not only evident from the preceding arguments, originally derived from his theology, but from the following verses quoted by Proclus 10. Hence with the universe great Jove contains the ether bright, and heaven's exalted plains. Extended restless sea, and earth renowned. Ocean immense, and Tartarus profound. Fountains and rivers, and the boundless main. With all that nature's ample realms contain. And gods and goddesses of each degree. All that is past, and all that e'er shall be. Occultly, and in fair connection 11, lies. In Jove's wide womb. The ruler of the skies. And in the same place, Proclus has preserved to us another copy of Orphic verses, which are also found in the writer, De Mundo. Previous to which he observes, that the demiurgus, or artificer of the world, being full of ideas, comprehended by these all things within himself, as that theologer, Orpheus, declares. With these verses we have connected others, agreeable to the order of Stevens, Eschenbach, and Gessner, as follows. Jove is the first and last thundering king. Middle and head, from Jove all beings spring. In Jove the male and female forms combine. For Jove's a man, and yet a maid divine. Jove the strong basis of the earth contains. And the deep splendor of the starry plains. Jove is the breath of all. Jove's wondrous frame lives in the rage of ever restless flame. Jove is the sea's strong root, the solar light. And Jove's the moon, fair regent of the night. Jove is a king by no restraint confined. And all things flow from Jove's prolific mind. One is the power divine in all things known. And one the ruler absolute alone. For in Jove's royal body all things lie. Fire, night and day, earth, water and the sky. The first begetters pleasing love and mind. These in his mighty body, Jove confined. See, how his beauteous head and aspect bright. Illumine heaven, and scatter boundless light. Round which his pendant golden tresses shine. Formed from the starry beams, with light divine. On either side two radiant horns behold. Shaped like a bull's and bright with glittering gold. And east and west in opposition lie the lucid paths of all the gods on high. His eyes, the sun, and moon with borrowed ray. Royal, ethereal. And his ear refined. Hears every voice, and sounds of every kind. Thus are his head and mind immortal, bright. His body's boundless, stable, full of light. 12. Strong are his members, with a force endued. Powerful to tame, but ne'er to be subdued. Extended region of surrounding air. Forms his broad shoulders, back, and bosom fair. And through the world the ruler of the skies. Upborne on natal, rapid pinions flies. His sacred belly earth with fertile plains. And mountains swelling to the clouds, contains. His middle zones the spreading sea profound. Whose roaring waves the solid globe surround. The distant realms of Tartarus obscure. Within earth's roots, his holy feet secure. For these earth's utmost bounds to Jove belong. And form his basis permanent and strong. Thus all things Jove within his breast concealed. And into beauteous light from thence revealed. These verses contain what Dr. Cudworth calls the grand arcanum of the Orphic theology, that God is all things. Which is likewise an Egyptian doctrine, from whence it was derived through Orpheus into Greece, and this sublime truth Plotinus XIII himself proves with his usual sagacity and depth. But here it is necessary to observe, that Orpheus and the Platonists do not conceive the deity to be all things, as if he were a divisible, corporeal nature. But that he is all things, because present everywhere, and to every being totally, though more or less intimately present, according to the various gradations and approximations of being. So that he is to be considered as containing all things, and yet as separate and apart from all, as the source of all multitude, yet himself perfect unity, and as immensely prolific, yet divinely solitary and ineffably good. Thus, according to Porphyry 14, explaining the properties of incorporeal natures, God, intellect, and soul are each of them everywhere, because nowhere. But God is everywhere, and at the same time, in no place of any being posterior to his nature. But he is only such as he is, and such as he willed himself to be. But intellect is indeed in the deity, yet every and in no place of its subordinate essences. And soul is in intellect, and in the deity, everywhere and nowhere with respect to body, but body exists in and in intellect, and in God. And though all beings, and non-entities, proceed from, and subsist in the deity, yet he is neither entities, or non-entities, nor has any subsistence in them. For if he was alone everywhere, he would indeed be all things, and in all, but because he is likewise nowhere, all things are produced by him. So that they subsist in him because he is everywhere, but are different from him because he is nowhere. Thus also intellect being everywhere and nowhere, is the cause of souls, and of natures subordinate to soul, at the same time it is neither soul, nor such things as are posterior to the soul, nor has it any subsistence in them. And this because it is not only everywhere in its subordinate natures, but at the same time nowhere. Thus too, soul is neither body, nor in body, but is the cause of body, because while it is everywhere diffused through body, it is nowhere. And this procession of the universe, extends as far as to that nature 15, which is incapable of being at the same time everywhere and nowhere, but which partially participates of each, and in another place of the same excellent fragment. He tells us that the ancients explaining the property of an incorporeal nature, as far as this can be effected by discourse, when they affirmed it to be one, at the same time add, that it is likewise all things. That it is everywhere, and nowhere, and that it is totally present in every whole. He adds, they express its nature entirely by contrary properties, that they may remove from it the fictitious and delusive conceptions of bodies which obscure those properties by which true being is known. 16. We have before observed, that the Platonic philosophers, agreeable to the doctrine of Orpheus, considered fecundity as, in an eminent degree, the property of a divine nature, and from this principle filled the universe with God. 17. This opinion a modern philosopher, or a modern writer on mythology, will doubtless consider as too ridiculous to need a serious refutation. The one, because he believes the phenomena may be solved by mechanical causes. And the other, in consequence of a system originating from prejudice, and supported without proof. However, prejudice apart, let us hear what the philosophers can urge in defense of this doctrine, in addition to what we have already advanced. To begin then with Onatus 18, the Pythagorean, those, says he, who assert that there is but one God, and not many gods, are deceived. As not considering that the supreme dignity of the divine transcendency consists in governing beings similar to itself, and in surpassing others. But the other gods have the same relation to this first and intelligible God, as the dancer, to the Orpheus, and as soldiers to their general, whose duty is to follow their leader. And although the same employment is common both to the ruler, and those who are ruled, yet the latter, if destitute of a leader, could no longer conspire together in one occupation. As the concord of the fingers and dancers, and the expedition of the army, must fail, if the one is deprived of the Orpheus and the other of the captain or commander. To the same purpose Plotinus 19 shews that it is perfectly philosophical to suppose a multitude of gods subordinate to the one supreme. It is necessary, says he, that every man should endeavor to be as good as possible, but at the same time, he should not consider himself as the only thing that is good but should be convinced that there are other good men and good demons in the universe, but much more gods, who though inhabiting this inferior region, yet look up to that higher world. And especially that most blessed soul, the ruling divinity of this universe. From whence a man ought to ascend still higher, and to celebrate the intelligible gods, but above all their great King. Declaring his majesty in a particular manner, by the multitude of gods subordinate to his divinity. For it is not the province of those who know the power of God, to contract all into one, but rather to exhibit all that divinity which he has displayed, who himself, remaining one, produces many, which proceed from him and by him. For the universe subsists by him, and perpetually speculates his divinity, together with each of the gods it contains. Should it be objected, that if such gods, or exalted beings, really existed, we should be able to demonstrate the reality of their existence, in the same manner as that of one supreme God. We cannot frame a better reply than in the words of Proclus 20. And perhaps, says he, you may affirm that souls more swiftly forget things nearer to them, but have a stronger remembrance of superior principles. For these last operate on them more vigorously, through the sublimity of their power, and appear to be present with them by their energy. And this happens with respect to our corporeal fight, which does not perceive many things situated on the earth, yet observes the inerratic sphere, and the stars it contains, because these strongly irradiate our eyes with their light. So the eye of our soul is more forgetful, and sooner loses the sight of principles proximate to its nature, than of such as are more elevated and divine. In like manner all religions and sects confess that there is one highest principle, and men everywhere invoke God as their helper. But that there are gods in subordination to this first cause, and that there is a providence proceeding from these to the universe, all men do not believe, and this because the one appears to them more perspicuously than the many. Indeed, in consequence of the Platonic doctrine of the pre-existence of the soul, it is not strange that we should know so little of those divine and exalted beings above us. Since from our union with generation and material concerns, we are imbued with oblivion, ignorance, and error. We are similar, as Porphyry 21 well observes, to those who enter or depart from a foreign region, not only in casting aside our native manners and customs, but from the long use of a strange country we are imbued with affections, manners, and laws foreign from our natural and true religion, and with a strong propensity to these unnatural habits. As, therefore, it is not wonderful that the greatest part of those who inhabit a pestiferous region, should languish and decline, but that a very few should preserve their natural strength. So we ought not to wonder, that thus placed in generation, the multitude of mankind are obnoxious to passions and depraved habits. But we ought rather to be astonished if any souls, thus involved in the dark folds of the body, and surrounded with such great and unceasing mutations, are found sober, pure, and free from destructive perturbations. For it is surely astonishing that the soul should live immaterially, in material concerns, and preserve itself uncontaminated amidst such base defilements. That it should drink of the cup of oblivion, and not be laid asleep by the intoxicating draught, that it should elevate its eye above the sordid darkness with which it is surrounded, and be able to open the gates of truth, which, though contained in its essence, are guarded and shut by terrene and material species. But that it is possible to know more of such exalted natures than is generally believed, by the assistance of the ancient philosophy, accompanied with a suitable life, is, I am persuaded, true. And I would recommend the arduous and glorious investigation to every liberal mind. Let us now consider the nature of sacrifice according to Orpheus and the Platonists. Previous to which, I must beg leave to inform the reader, that the Greek theologists and philosophers were not, as they are represented by modern writers on mythology, so stupid as to worship the creature instead of the Creator, and to neglect or confound that homage and veneration, which is due to the first cause of all. On the contrary, they considered the Supreme Being as honored by the reverence paid to his most illustrious offspring, and carefully distinguished between the worship proper to the deity, and to the subordinate gods, as the following discourse will abundantly evince. How far indeed, such opinions may be consistent with revelation, it is not my business to determine. It is sufficient for me, to give the most faithful account I am able of their sentiments on this subject, to free their opinions from misrepresentation, and to shew that God has not left himself without a witness among the wise and learned of the heathens. But as I cannot give a better account of the nature and antiquity of sacrifice than from the writings of Porphyry, I shall present the reader with the following paraphrase, on part of the second book of his excellent work on abstinence. The period of time appears to have been immensely distant, from which, as Theophrastus says, a nation the most learned of all others, and inhabiting the sacred region formed by the Nile, began first of all, from the domestic fire, to sacrifice to the celestial divinities. Not with myrrh or cassia, nor with the first fruits of frankincense mingled with saffron, for these were applied many ages afterwards. From error increasing in certain degrees, I mean at the period when men having surmounted the difficulties of a life, formerly oppressed with the cares of procuring necessaries, and from the beginning to the end attended with many labors and tears, sacrificed perhaps a few drops to the gods. For at first they performed sacrifices, not with aromatics but with the first fruits of the green herb, plucking it with their hands, as a certain soft down or moss of prolific nature. Indeed the earth produced trees before animals. But prior to trees, the annually rising grass, the leaves, and roots, and entire produce of which having collected, they sacrificed with fire, by this sacrifice, saluting the visible celestial gods, and rendering them through the ministry of fire immortal honors. For we preserve as sacred to those divinities, a perpetual fire in our temples, since this element is most similar to their lucid frames. But with respect to fumigations from herbs produced by the earth, they called the censer or pan, in which the herbs were burnt, upsilon mu iota alpha tau iota omicron, and to perform sacrifice epsilon iota nu. And the sacrifices themselves upsilon sigma alpha iota, all which we have erroneously interpreted, as if these words were signatures of that error, which afterwards crept in among us. And hence it is that we call the worship consisting from the slaughter of animals upsilon sigma alpha iota. Indeed so great was the care of the ancients, in retaining their primeval customs, that they uttered imprecations against those who deserted the old manner, and introduced a new one, and therefore they called those herbs with which we now fumigate alpha rho omega mu tau alpha, aromatics. But the antiquity of the above-mentioned fumigations will be perceived by him who considers that even now many odorous kinds of wood, cut into fragments, are employed in sacrifice. From whence it happened that the earth now bearing trees together with grass, its earliest production, men at first eating the fruits of oaks, burned only a few of these in sacrifices to the gods, on account of the rarity of such sustenance, but sacrificed a multitude of the leaves. Afterwards human life passed to a gentle diet, and sacrifices were performed with nuts, from whence the proverb originated, lambda iota delta rho upsilon, enough of the oak. But among the fruits of Ceres, after the first appearance of leguminous barley, mankind were accustomed to sprinkle it, made into an entire mass, in their first sacrifices. Afterwards breaking the barley, and diminishing the nutriment into meal, having concealed the instruments of so great a work, which afford divine assistance to human life, they approached these as certain sacred concerns. But they cast the first fruits of the barley, when bruised into meal, and which was more esteemed than when whole, into the fire, in sacrifice to the gods, from whence even now, at the conclusion of the sacrifice, we make use of meal mixed with wine and oil. By this custom indeed we indicate from whence, and from what beginning sacrifices have increased to the present state, but, at the same time, we do not consider why such things are performed. Mankind proceeding from these small beginnings, and the earth yielding an abundant supply of corn and various fruits, they judged that the first produce of all the rest should be offered in sacrifices. With a view of pleasing the various orders of the gods, selecting many things for this purpose, and mingling not a few others with these, if they possessed anything beautiful, and on account of its odoriferous nature accommodated to divine sensation. With some of these, formed into garlands, they encircled the statues of the gods, and others they sacrificed with fire. Likewise to the gods as the proper causes, they poured forth the divine drops of wine, and honey, and oil, when their uses were first discovered. The truth of the preceding account appears to be confirmed by the procession celebrated even now at Athens, in honor of the sun and the hours. For in this solemnity grass is carried about, in wrapping the kernels of olives, attended with figs, all kinds of pulse, oaken boughs or acorns, the fruit of the strawberry, wheat, and barley, a mass of dried figs. Cakes composed from the meal of wheat and barley, heaped in a pyramidal form, and last of all olives. Theophrastus then proceeds to shew the impropriety of animal sacrifices, after which he adds, but the utility of fruits is the first and greatest of every production. The first fruits of which are to be sacrificed to the gods alone, and to the earth, the prolific parent of every herb. For earth is the common vesta of gods and men, on whose fertile surface reclining, as on the soft bosom of a mother or a nurse, we ought to celebrate her divinity with hymns, and incline to her with filial affection, as to the source of our existence. For thus, when we approach to the conclusion of our mortal life, we shall be thought worthy of a reception into the celestial regions, and of an association with the race of immortal gods, who now behold us venerating their divinities with those fruits, of which they are the authors, and sacrificing in their honor every herb of the all-bearing earth. At the same time not esteeming everything worthy or proper to be offered as a testimony of our homage. For as everything indiscriminately is not to be sacrificed to the gods, so perhaps we cannot find anything sufficiently worthy, with which we may worship them as they deserve. Thus far Theophrastus. Porphyry then proceeds to shew after what manner those ought to sacrifice who propose an intellectual life, as the ultimate object of their pursuit. Let us also, says B, sacrifice, but in a manner becoming the offspring of intellect, bringing with us the most exalted offerings, with our most exalted powers. To the divinity indeed, who is above all things, as a wise man said, neither sacrificing or dedicating anything sensible or material. For there is nothing subsisting by material concretion, which must not be deemed impure by a nature entirely free from the contagion of body. Hence even the discourse, which is proffered by the voice is not proper to be addressed to a cause so sublime and ineffable. Nor the internal speech of the soul, if contaminated with any perturbation, or mixed with any of the sensible phantasms of imagination. But we ought to worship the supreme God, in the most profound and pure silence, and with the purest thoughts concerning his exalted nature. It is requisite, therefore, that having conjoined and assimilated ourselves to him, we should approach this sublime principle with a pious sacrifice, which may redound to his praise, and to our safety. But such a sacrifice can only be performed by contemplating his divinity with a soul free from material affections, and with the rational eye filled with intellectual light. But to the offspring of this first God, I mean the intelligible divinities, we should present the sacrifice of hymns, composed by the rational principle. For it is customary to offer the first fruits of such things as every God bestows upon us, by which he nourishes and supports our existence, and which are subservient to the purposes of sacrifice. As the husbandman, therefore, performs sacred rites, by presenting handfuls of pulse and fruits, so ought we to sacrifice our purest thoughts, and other goods of the soul, thanking the divinities for the sublime contemplations they afford us. And for truly feeding our intellectual part with the speculation of their essences. For, conversing with us, and appearing to our mental sight, for shining upon us with divine splendors, and by this means procuring for us true salvation. But an exercise of this kind is performed in an indolent manner, by many who apply themselves to philosophy, and who more sedulously cultivating fame than honoring the divinity, are wholly employed about statues. Taking no care to learn after what manner, or whether or not these intellectual beings are to be adored. Nor by properly consulting divine concerns, are they anxious to know, in how great a degree, we ought to strive after an union with these exalted natures. With such as these we by no means contend. Since our only endeavor is to obtain a knowledge of divinity, and to imitate pious and ancient men, by frequently sacrificing of that contemplation which the gods have bestowed upon us, and by the use of which we are partakers of real salvation. The Pythagoreans indeed who were very studious of numbers and lines, for the most part sacrificed of these to the gods, denominating this number Minerva 22, another Apollo, and again, this Justice, and another Temperance. They proceeded also in a similar manner in geometrical figures. Hence they pleased the divinities by sacrifices of this kind, calling each of them by their proper names, for the purpose of obtaining their particular requests. They often besides made such invocations subservient to the purposes of divination. And if they required the investigation of anything particular, they used the visible celestial gods, also the wandering and fixed stars, of all which the sun ought to be placed as a leader, next to this the moon. And, as a theologian observes, we should make fire allied to these by approximate conjunction. But the same person asserts that the Pythagoreans sacrificed no animal, but offered the first fruits of flour and honey, and of the diversified productions of the earth. Nor kindled fire on the bloody altar, says he, with other things of a similar nature, but why should I transcribe such relations? For he who is truly studious of piety, knows why he ought not to sacrifice anything animated to gods, but alone to genii, and other powers superior to man, whether good or bad. He likewise knows to what kind of men it belongs to sacrifice these, and every circumstance respecting those beings, who require such sacrifices to be performed. With regard to other particulars I shall be silent. But what some Platonists have divulged will perspicuously illustrate the subject before us, which I shall relate as follows. The first God, since he is incorporeal, immovable, and indivisible, neither existing, in any being, place, or time, nor even circumscribed by, and as it were invested with himself, is in no respect indigent of anything external to his nature. As we have already observed. But this last property of a divine essence is likewise true of the soul of the world, possessing a triple divisibility, and being naturally self-motive, yet so constituted that it chooses to move in an orderly and beautiful manner, and to agitate the corporeal fabric of the world according to the most excellent and harmonious reasons. But it associates to itself and is circularly invested with body, although incorporeal and entirely destitute of passion. But to the other gods, to the world, and to the erratic and fixed stars, composed from body and soul, and to the visible divinities, testimonials of gratitude are to be offered by sacrificing with inanimate substances. After these there remains that multitude of invisible beings, which Plato indiscriminately calls demons. Some of these are allotted a peculiar name by mankind, from whom they obtain divine honors and other kinds of religious worship, but others of these are for the most part called by no peculiar name, but are obscurely worshipped by some men, and are denominated according to certain streets or cities. But the remaining multitude are called by the common name of demons. Concerning all these, a general persuasion obtains, that their influence is noxious and malignant if they are once angered because their accustomed worship is neglected, and that they are again beneficent if appeased by prayers and supplications, by sacrifices and convenient rites. But the confused opinion which subsists concerning these beings, and which has proceeded to great infamy, requires that we should distinguish their nature according to the decisions of reason. After this manner then they are distributed. As many souls as proceeding from the universal soul, administer considerable parts of those places contained under the lunar orb, who are indeed connected with an aerial part, but subjected to the dominion of reason, are to be esteemed good demons. We ought to believe that all their operations tend to the utility of the concern subject to their dominion, whether they preside over certain animals, or over fruits assigned to their charge, or over things subservient to these particulars. Such as prolific showers, moderate winds, serene weather, and whatever is calculated to promote these, as a good temperament of the seasons of the year, and they likewise administer to us the use of music, and of every discipline, together with the medicinal and gymnastic arts, and whatever else is allied to these. For it is impossible that such demons can supply what is convenient and proper, and at the same time be the authors of things destructive and improper. In this class the messengers, as Plato calls them, between gods and men must be numbered, who convey our prayers and pious offerings to the gods as judges of our conduct, and bring back to us in return divine warnings, exhortations, and oracles. But as many souls as do not properly govern the aerial part with which they are connected, but are for the most part subdued by its influence, and are agitated and hurried away by its brutal power in a rash and disorderly manner. Whenever the wrathful irritations and desires of the pneumatic part grow strong, souls of this kind are properly denominated demons, but ought at the same time to be called malevolent and base. All these, together with those who obtain a contrary power, are invisible, and entirely imperceptible to human sensation, for they are not invested like terrene animals with a solid body, nor are they all endued with one shape. But they possess a diversity of forms. However, the forms impressed on their aerial part, are sometimes apparent, and at other times obscured. Sometimes two evil demons change their shapes. But this pneumatic part, so far as corporeal, is subject to passion and change, and although it is so confined by the coercive power of these demoniacal souls, that its form continues for a long time, yet it is not by this means eternal. For it is reasonable to believe, that something continually flows from this aerial part, and that it receives a nutriment accommodated to its nature. Indeed the pi nu epsilon upsilon mu alpha, or aerial part of the good demons, consists in a certain commensurate proportion, in the same manner as those bodies which are the objects of our present perception. But the bodies of the malevolent demons are of a discordant temperament, on which account they inhabit that aerial space proximate to the earth, with a passive affection, and for the most part govern things subject to their dominion with a turbulent malignity. Hence there is no evil which they do not endeavor to perpetrate. For their manners are entirely violent and fraudulent, and destitute of the guardian preservation of better demons, so that they machinate vehement and sudden snares with which they rush on the unwary, sometimes endeavoring to conceal their incursions, and sometimes acting, with open violence against the subjects of their oppression. Thus far Porphyry, the length of which quotation needs no apology, both on account of its excellence, and because the unlearned reader will not find it elsewhere in English. I would also add that I wish, with a proper sense of the greatness of the undertaking, to offer this, together with the preceding and subsequent paraphrases, as specimens of that method mentioned in the preface to this work, and which I cannot but consider as the best means of exhibiting the Greek philosophy in modern languages. Having then discoursed so largely from Porphyry concerning sacrifice, and as he particularly recommends the sacrifice performed by contemplation and divine hymns, let us hear his sentiments concerning the nature of prayer, as they are preserved to us by Proclus in his excellent commentary on the Timaeus, page 64. It is requisite, says Proclus, before all things, that we understand something perspicuously concerning the nature of prayer, I mean in what its essence consists, what its perfection is, and from whence it becomes natural to our souls. He then proceeds to relate the opinion of Porphyry as follows. For Porphyry discoursing concerning such of the ancients as either approved of, or exploded prayer, leads us through various opinions, which I shall now summarily relate. Neither those who labor under the first kind of impiety, I mean denying the existence of the gods, claim any advantage to themselves from prayer, nor yet those of the second class, who entirely subvert a providence. For though they acknowledge the existence of the gods, yet they deny their provident concern for the affairs of the universe. Nor again those of a third order, who they confess that there are gods, and that their providence extends to the world. Yet consider all things as produced by the divinities from necessity, for the utility of prayer is derived from such things as are contingent, and may have a different existence. But those who both acknowledge the being of the gods, and their continual providence, and that some events are contingent, and may subsist in a different manner. These men indeed may be truly said to approve of prayer, and to confess that the gods correct our life, and establish it in safety. Proclus then proceeds to relate the reasons by which Porphyry confirms its utility. He adds that prayer in a particular manner pertains to worthy men, because it conjoins them with divinity, for similars love to be united together, but a worthy man is in an eminent degree similar to the divine natures. We may likewise add, that since good men are placed in custody, and confined by the dark bands of the body as in a prison, they ought to pray to the gods, that it may be lawful for them to depart from hence. Besides, since we are as children torn from the bosom of our parent, we ought on this account to request by our prayers that we may return to the gods our true intellectual parents. If this is the case, do not they who deny that prayers are to be offered to the gods, and who prevent their souls from being united with the divinities, that is with beings more excellent than themselves, appear similar to those who are deprived of their parents? Lastly, all nations who have flourished in the exercise of wisdom, have applied themselves to divine prayers, as the Brahmins among the Indians, the Magi among the Persians, and amongst the Greeks also. Those who have excelled in the science of theology, for on this account they instituted mysteries and initiatory rites, tau epsilon lambda epsilon tau alpha iota. Besides, this consideration is not to be omitted, that since we are a part of this universe, it is consonant to reason that we should be dependent on it for support. For a conversion to the universe procures safety to everything which it contains. If therefore you possess virtue, it is requisite you should invoke that divinity which previously comprehended in himself every virtue, for universal good is the cause of that good which belongs to you by participation. And if you seek after some corporeal good, the world is endued with a power which contains universal body. From hence therefore it is necessary that perfection should also extend to the parts. Thus far that most excellent philosopher Porphyry. In which quotation, as well as the preceding, the reader must doubtless confess, that Proclus did not without reason admire him, for what he calls his tau iota epsilon rho omicron pi rho epsilon pi nu omicron mu alpha tau alpha, or conceptions adapted to holy concerns. For surely no philosopher ever possessed them in a more eminent degree. If it should be asked, in what the power of prayer consists, according to these philosophers, I answer, in a certain sympathy and similitude of natures to each other, just as in an extended chord, where when the lowest part is moved, the highest presently after gives a responsive motion. Or as in the firings of a musical instrument, attempered to the same harmony, one chord trembling from the pulsation of another, as if it were endued with sensation from symphony. So in the universe, there is one harmony though composed from contraries, since they are at the same time similar and allied to each other. For from the soul of the world, like an immortal self-motive lyre, life everywhere resounds, but in some things more inferior and remote from perfection than in others. And with respect to the supermundane gods, sympathy and similitude subsists in these as in their most perfect exemplars, from whence they are participated by sensible natures, their obscure and imperfect images. Hence, say they, we must not conceive, that our prayers cause any animadversion in the gods, or, properly speaking, draw down their beneficence. But that they are rather the means of elevating the soul to these divinities, and disposing it for the reception of their supernal illumination. For the divine irradiation, which takes place in prayer, shines and energizes spontaneously, restoring unity to the soul, and causing our energy to become one with divine energy. For such, according to these philosophers, is the efficacy of prayer, that it unites all inferior with all superior beings. Since, as the great Theodorus says, all things pray except the first. Indeed so great is the power of similitude, that through its unifying nature all things coalesce, and impart their particular properties to ethers. Whilst primary natures distribute their gifts to such as are secondary, by an abundant illumination, and effects are established in the causes from which they proceed. But the connection and indissoluble society of active universals, and of passive particulars, is everywhere beheld. For the generative causes of things, are contained by similitude in their effects. And in causes themselves their progeny subsist, comprehended in perfect union and consent. Hence the celestial orbs impart a copious defluxion of good to this terrestrial region. While sublunary parts, assimilated in a certain respect to the heavens, participate a perfection convenient to their nature. Hence too, from the progressions of similitude, there are various leaders in the universe. And many orders of angels dancing harmoniously round their ruling deities, together with a multitude of demons, heroes, and particular souls. There are besides multiform kinds of mortal animals, and various powers of plants. So that all things tend to their respective leaders, and are as it were stamped with one sign of domestic unity, which is in form more evident, and in others more obscure. For indeed similitude in first productions subsists more apparently. But in those of the middle and extreme orders is obscured in consequence of the gradations of progression. Hence images and exemplars derive their hypostasis from conciliating similitude. And everything through this is familiar to itself, and to its kindred natures. But it is time to return from this digression to the business of sacrifice and prayer. That we may therefore have a clearer view of the nature and efficacy of each, let us hear the elegant and subtle Proclus 23, upon sacrifice and magic, of which the following is a paraphrase. In the same manner as lovers gradually advance from that beauty which is apparent in sensible forms, to that which is divine. So the ancient priests, when they considered that there was a certain alliance and sympathy in natural things to each other, and of things manifest to occult powers, and by this means discovered that all things subsist in all. They fabricated a sacred science, from this mutual sympathy in similarity. Thus they recognize things supreme, in such as are subordinate, and the subordinate in the supreme, in the celestial regions terrene properties subsisting in a causal and celestial manner. And in earth celestial properties, but according to a terrene condition. For how shall we account for those plants called heliotropes, that is attendance on the sun, moving in correspondence with the revolution of its orb? But selenotropes, or attendance on the moon, turning in exact conformity with her motion. It is because all things pray, and compose hymns to the leaders of their respective orders, but some intellectually, and others rationally. Some in a natural, and others after a sensible manner. Hence the sunflower, as far as it is able, moves in a circular dance towards the sun. So that if any one could hear the pulsation made by its circuit in the air, he would perceive something composed by a sound of this kind, in honor of its king such as a plant is capable of framing. Hence we may behold the sun and moon in the earth, but according to a terrene quality. But in the celestial regions, all plants, and stones, and animals, possessing an intellectual life according to a celestial nature. Now the ancients having contemplated this mutual sympathy of things, applied for occult purposes both celestial and terrene natures, by means of which through a certain similitude they deduced divine virtues into this inferior abode. For indeed similitude itself is a sufficient cause of binding things together in union and consent. Thus if a piece of paper is heated, and afterwards placed near a lamp, though it does not touch the fire, the paper will be suddenly inflamed, and the flame will descend from the superior to the inferior parts. This heated paper we may compare to a certain relation of inferiors to superiors, and its approximation to the lamp, to the opportune use of things according to time, place, and matter. But the procession of fire in the paper aptly represents the presence of divine light, to that nature which is capable of its reception. Lastly, the inflammation of the paper may be compared to the deification of mortals, and to the illumination of material natures, which are afterwards carried upwards like the fire of the paper, from a certain participation of divine feed. Again, the lotus before the rising of the sun, folds its leaves into itself, but gradually expands them on its rising, unfolding them in proportion to the sun's ascent to the zenith. But as gradually contracting them as that luminary descends to the west. Hence this plant by the expansion and contraction of its leaves appears no less to honor the sun than men by the gesture of their eyelids, and the motion of their lips. But this imitation and certain participation of supernal light is not only visible in plants, which possess but a vestige of life, but likewise in particular stones. Thus the sunstone, by its golden rays, imitates those of the sun. But the stone called the eye of heaven, or of the sun, has a figure similar to the pupil of an eye, and a ray shines from the middle of the pupil. Thus too the lunar stone, which has a figure similar to the moon when horned, by a certain change of itself, follows the lunar motion. Lastly, the stone called helioselenus, i.e. of the sun and moon, imitates after a manner the congress of those luminaries, which it images by its color. So that all things are full of divine natures. Terrestrial natures receiving the plenitude of such as are celestial, but celestial of supercelestial essences, while every order of things proceeds gradually in a beautiful descent, from the highest to the lowest. For whatever is collected into one above the order of things, is afterwards dilated in descending, various souls being distributed under their various ruling divinities. In fine, some things turn round correspondent to the revolutions of the sun, and others after a manner imitate the solar rays, as the palm and the date, some the fiery nature of the sun as the laurel, and other a different property. For indeed we may perceive the properties which are collected in the sun, everywhere distributed to subsequent natures constituted in a solar order, that is, to angels, demons, souls, animals, plants, and stones. Hence the authors of the ancient priesthood, discovered from things apparent, the worship of superior powers, while they mingled some things, and purified with others. They mingled many things indeed together, because they saw that some simple substances possessed a divine property, though not taken singly, sufficient to call down that particular power, of which they were participants. Hence by the mingling of many things together, they attracted upon us a supernal influx, and by the composition of one thing from many, they symbolized with that one, which is above many. And composed statues from the mixtures of various substances, conspiring in sympathy and consent. Besides this, they collected composite odors, by a divine art, into one, comprehending a multitude of powers, and symbolizing, with the unity of a divine essence. Considering besides, that division debilitates each of these, but that mingling them together restores them to the idea of their exemplar. Hence the ancient priests, by the mutual relation and sympathy of things to one another, collected their virtues into one, but expelled them by repugnancy in antipathy. Purifying, when it was requisite, with sulfur and bitumen, and the sprinkling of marine water. For sulfur purifies from the sharpness of its odor, but marine water on account of its fiery portion. Besides this, in the worship of the gods, they offered animals, and other substances congruous to their nature. And received in the first place the powers of demons as proximate to natural substances and operations, by whose assistance they evocated these natural bodies to which they approached into their presence. Afterwards they proceeded from demons to the powers and energies of the gods, partly indeed from demoniacal instruction, but partly by their own industry, aptly interpreting symbols, and ascending to a proper intelligence of the gods. And lastly laying aside natural substances and their operations, they received themselves into the communion and fellowship of the gods. Thus far Proclus, and thus much for the theological doctrine of Orpheus, as contained in the works of the latter Platonists. I persuade myself enough has been said in this dissertation to convince every thinking and liberal mind, that the Greek theology as professed and understood by the Greek philosophers, is not that absurd and nonsensical system, represented by modern prejudice and ignorance, as the creed of the ancients. In consequence of a blind and mistaken zeal it is common to ridicule the opinions of the ancient philosophers, in order to establish the certainty of the Christian religion. But surely revelation does not require so unwarrantable and feeble a support, which in reality only betrays the cause it endeavors to defend, by giving infidels occasion to suspect either weakness in its evidence, or obscurity in its fundamental doctrines. Besides, the generality of these uncandid opponents know nothing of the Platonical writers, from whom alone genuine information can be derived on this sublime and intricate subject. and from whose works the preceding dissertation has been so abundantly enriched. Were these invaluable books more generally known and understood, if they did not refine our taste, at present so depraved, they would at least teach us to admire the strength which human reason is capable of exerting, and to be more modest in our pretensions to wisdom. They would silence ignorant declaimers, and stop the immense increase of books on modern philosophy, which are so rapidly hastening to the abyss of forgetfulness, like streams into the ocean from which they originally flowed. Section 3. But it is now time to speak of the following hymns, of which, as we have before observed, Onomacritus is the reputed author. And first, with regard to the dialect of these hymns, Gesner well observes it ought to be no objection to their antiquity. For though, according to 24 Iamblichus, the Thracian Orpheus, who is more ancient than those noble poets Homer and Hesiod, used the Doric dialect, yet the Athenian Onomacritus, who, agreeable to the general opinion of antiquity, is the author of all the works now extant, ascribed to Orpheus 25, might either, preserving the sentences and a great part of the words, only change the dialect, and teach the ancient Orpheus to speak Homerically, or as I may say Salonically, or might arbitrarily add or take away what he thought proper, which Herodotus relates was his practice, with respect to the oracles. Gesner adds, that it does not appear probable to him that Onomacritus would dare to invent all he writ, since Orpheus must necessarily, at that time, have been in great repute, and a variety of his verses in circulation, and he concludes with observing that the objection of the Doric dialect ought to be of no more weight against the antiquity of the present works, than the Pelasgic letters, which Orpheus used according to Diodorus Siculus. The hymns of Orpheus are not only mentioned by Plato in his 8th book of Laws, but also by Pausanias 26, whose words are translated as follows by the author of the letters on Mythology 27. The Thracian Orpheus, says Pausanias, was represented on Mount Helicon, with tau epsilon lambda epsilon tau eta, initiation or religion, by his side, and the wild beasts of the woods, some in marble, some in bronze, standing round him. His hymns are known by those who have studied the poets to be both short and few in number. The Lycomedes, an Athenian family dedicated to sacred music, have them all by heart, and sing them at their solemn mysteries. They are but of the second class for elegance, being far excelled by Homer's in that respect. But our religion has adopted the hymns of Orpheus, and has not done the same honor to the hymns of Homer. To the testimony of Pausanias may be added that of Suidas, who, among the writings of the Libethrian Orpheus mentions tau epsilon lambda epsilon tau alpha iota, or initiations, which he says are by some ascribed to Onomacritus 28. And Scaliger well observes, in his notes these hymns, that they ought rather to be called initiations, because they contain only invocations of the gods, such as the initiated in mysteries are accustomed to use. But they do not celebrate the nativities, actions, and of the divinities, as it is usual in hymns. It is on this account we have entitled them mystical initiations, which is doubtless their proper appellations. The author too of the allegories in the Theogony of Hesiod 29, relating the powers of the planets on things inferior, expressly mentions these hymns, or rather initiations, and many of the compound epithets with which they abound 30. From all which it is evident that the following hymns were written by the Athenian Onomacritus, and are the same with those so much celebrated by antiquity. Indeed, it is not probable they should be the invention of any writer more modern than the above period, as it must have been so easy to detect the forgery, from the original initiations which were even extant at the time in which Suidas lived. In the former part of this dissertation, we asserted that we should derive all our information concerning the Orphic theology, from the writings of the Platonists, not indeed without reason. For this sublime theology descended from Orpheus to Pythagoras, and from Pythagoras to Plato, as the following testimonies evince. Timaeus, says Proclus, 31 being a Pythagorean, follows the Pythagoric principles, and these are the Orphic traditions. For what Orpheus delivered mystically in secret discourses, these Pythagoras learned when he was initiated by Aglaophamus in the Orphic mysteries. Syrianus too makes the Orphic and Pythagoric principles to be one and the same. And, according to Suidas, the same Syrianus composed a book, entitled The Harmony of Orpheus, Pythagoras and Plato 32. And again Proclus 33, it is Pythagorical to follow the Orphic genealogies. For from the Orphic tradition downward by Pythagoras, the science concerning the gods was derived to the Greeks. And elsewhere 34, all the theology of the Greeks is the progeny of the sacred initiations, mu upsilon sigma alpha gamma omega gamma iota alpha iota, of Orpheus. For Pythagoras first learned the orgies of the gods from Aglaophamus, but Plato was the second who received a perfect science of these, both from the Pythagoric and Orphic writings. Now in consequence of these testimonies, our hymns ought to agree with the doctrine of Pythagoras, especially since Onamacritus, their author, was of that school. And that they do so, the following discovery abundantly evinces. Photius, in his Bibliotheca, has preserved to us part of a valuable work, written by Nicomachus the Pythagorean, entitled Theological Arithmetic. In which he ascribes particular epithets, and the names of various divinities to numbers, as far as to 10. There is likewise a curious work of the same title, by an anonymous writer, which is extant only in manuscript. From these two, and from occasional passages respecting numbers according to Pythagoras, found in the Platonic writers, Mercius has composed a book, which he calls Denarius Pythagoricus. And which is an invaluable treatise to such as are studious of the ancient philosophy. On perusing this learned book, it seemed to me necessary, that as the divinities, ascribed to each number, had a particular relation to one another, they should also have a mutual agreement in the following hymns. And on the comparison I found the most perfect similitude, a few instances of which I shall select, leaving a more accurate investigation of this matter to the learned and philosophical reader. In the first place then, among the various names ascribed to the monad or unity, are those of the following gods, viz. The Sun, Jupiter, Love, Proteus, Vesta. Now in the hymn to the Sun we find the epithet, O immortal Jove. In that to Love pi upsilon rho delta rho omicron mu omicron, or wandering fire, which is likewise found in the hymn, to the Sun. In the hymn to Love, that deity is celebrated as having the keys of all things 35, viz. Of ether, heaven, the deep, the earth, and Proteus is invoked as possessing the keys of the deep 36. Again, Vesta, in the Orphic hymns, is the same with the mother of the gods, and the mother of the gods is celebrated as always governing rivers in every C37. Which perfectly agrees with the appellations given both to Love and Proteus. Again, among the various epithets ascribed to the duad, or number 2, are, Fans, Nature, Justice, Rhea, Diana, Cupid, Venus, Fate, Death, and Now Fans, in the Orphic hymns, is the same with Protagonus, and Nature is called Pyro Omega Tau Omicron Gamma Epsilon Nu Alpha, or Firstborn, and Delta Kappa Eta, or Justice, as also Pi Epsilon Pyro Omega Mu Epsilon Nu, or Fate. Likewise Rhea is denominated Gamma Alpha Tau Epsilon Rho Pi Omicron Lambda Upsilon Mu Omicron Rho Phi Upsilon Pi Omega Tau Omicron Gamma Omicron Nu Omicron Omicron, or Daughter, of much-formed Protagonus, and in the same hymn the reader will find other epithets, which agree with the appellation given to Nature. Again, both Nature and Diana are called Kappa Upsilon Lambda Omicron Chi Epsilon Alpha, or swiftly bringing forth, and Love as well as Nature is called or twofold. In like manner Rhea and Venus agree, for he says of Venus Pi Nu Tau Alpha Gamma Rho Kappa Sigma Iota Theta Epsilon Nu Sigma Nu, for all things are from thee. And of Rhea, Mu Tau Eta Rho Mu Nu Tau Epsilon Theta Epsilon Nu Delta Theta Nu Eta Tau Nu Nu Theta Rho Pi Omega Nu, or Mother of gods and mortal men. After which he expressly says that earth and heaven, the sea and the air, proceed from her divinity. Besides this, he celebrates Venus as governing the three fates, Alpha Mu Pi Eta Rho Alpha Tau Epsilon Iota Sigma Tau Rho Iota Sigma Sigma Nu Mu Omicron Iota Rho Nu. And lastly he says of Love, after representing that deity as invested with the keys of all things thou alone rulest the governments of all these 38. Which he likewise affirms of Death in the same words. And thus much for the duad. The triad, or number 3, they denominated Juno, Latona, Thetis, Hecate or Diana, Pluto, Tritogenia or Minerva, and Now Latona and Thetis, are each of them called in these initiations, Kappa Upsilon Alpha Nu Pi Epsilon Pi Lambda hashtag or dark-veiled, and Minerva and the Moon, who is the same with Diana, Theta Lambda Omega Sigma Alpha Mu Pi Rho Sigma Eta Nu, female and male. The tetrad or number 4, they denominated Hercules, Vulcan, Mercury, Bacchus two-mothered, Bessarius, key-keeper of nature, masculine, feminine, the world, which in these initiations is the same with Pan, harmony, justice. Now Onomacritus calls Hercules and Vulcan, Kappa Alpha Rho Tau Epsilon Rho Omicron Chi Epsilon Iota Rho, or strong-handed, and he celebrates Hercules and Mercury as having an almighty heart Alpha Tau Kappa Rho Alpha Tau Epsilon Tau Omicron Rho Chi Nu. And so of the rest. The pentad or number of 5 they called nature, Pallas, immortal, providence, nemesis, Venus, justice, and Now nature is called in these hymns, or rather initiations Pi Omicron Lambda Upsilon Mu Chi Alpha Nu Epsilon Mu Tau Epsilon Rho, or much mechanic mother, and Pi Alpha Nu Tau Omicron Tau Epsilon Chi Nu Epsilon Sigma, or universal artist. And Minerva is denominated Mu Eta Tau Epsilon Rho Tau Epsilon Chi Nu Nu, or mother of arts. Likewise nature is expressly called Theta Alpha Nu Tau Eta Tau Epsilon Rho Nu Iota Omicron Iota Alpha, or immortal, and providence. The hexad or number 6, they denominated, Venus, health, the world Kappa Alpha Tau Eta Epsilon Lambda Tau Iota darting, because compounded of the triad, which is called Hecate, Persea, Triform, Amphitrite, and Now Venus, as we have already observed in the names of the duad, is said to be the source of all things, and health is expressly called Mu Tau Epsilon Rho Pi Alpha Nu Tau Omega Nu, or mother of all things. Again the heptad, or number 7 they called fortune, Minerva, Mars, and fortune, in these initiations, is the same with Diana or the moon, who is called male and female as well as Minerva, and Minerva and Mars are each of them denominated Pi Lambda Iota Chi Alpha Rho or armipotent, and Minerva Pi Omicron Lambda Epsilon Mu Omicron Kappa Lambda Nu Epsilon, or full of warlike tumult. The Ogdoad, or number 8, they called Rhea, love, Neptune, law. And the mother of the gods, who is the same with Rhea, is represented as we have observed on the monad, as governing rivers in every sea. And love is said to have the keys of all things, of heaven, the deep, and the Ennead, or number 9, they denominate ocean, Prometheus, Vulcan, Poion, i.e. Apollo or the sun, Juno, Proserpine, and now Saturn, who is called in these initiations Prometheus, and ocean, are each of them celebrated as the source of gods and men, and Vulcan is expressly called Lambda Iota Omicron Sigma, or the sun. And lastly they denominated the decad, heaven, the sun, unwearied, fate, fans, necessity, and hence heaven is called in these initiations Phi Lambda Alpha Xi Pi Nu Tau Omega Nu, or guardian of all things, and the sun Iota Sigma Omicron Phi Lambda Alpha Xi, or faithful guardian. And Kappa Mu Alpha, or unwearied, is an appellation of the sun, in the hymn to that deity. The reader too will find many epithets in the hymn to Protagonus or fans, corresponding with those of the sun. And thus much for the agreement of these hymns, with the Pythagorean names of numbers. The limits of the present work will not permit me to be more explicit on this particular. But he who wishes to understand the meaning of many of the preceding appellations, may consult the valuable book of Mercius, already cited, where he will meet with abundant matter for deep speculation. But before I conclude this dissertation, I must beg leave to acquaint the reader with another discovery which I have made respecting these hymns, equally curious with the former. Ficinus, on Plato's Theology 39, has the following remarkable passage, translated, most likely from some manuscript work of Proclus, as I conjecture from its conclusion, for, unfortunately, he does not acquaint us with the author. Those who profess, says he, the Orphic theology, consider a twofold power in souls and in the celestial orbs, the one consisting in knowledge, the other in vivifying and governing the orb with which that power is connected. Thus in the orb of the earth, they call the Gnostic power Pluto, the other Proserpine 40. In water, the former power Ocean, and the latter Thetis. In air, that thundering Jove, and this Juno. In fire, that Fans, and this Aurora. In the soul of the lunar sphere, they call the Gnostic power Lichniton Bacchus, the other Talia. In the sphere of Mercury, that Bacchus Silenus, this Euterpe. In the orb of Venus, that Lygius Bacchus, this Erato. In the sphere of the Sun, that Triatericus Bacchus, this Melpomene. In the orb of Mars, that Bassarius Bacchus, this Clio. In the sphere of Jove, that Sabazius, this Terpsichore. In the orb of Saturn, that Amphiatus, this Polymnia. In the eighth sphere, that Paritionius, this Urania. But in the soul of the world, the Gnostic power, Bacchus Erebromus, but the animating power Calliope. From all which the Orphic theologians infer, that the particular epithets of Bacchus are compared with those of the Muses on this account, that we may understand the powers of the Muses, as intoxicated with the nectar of divine knowledge. And may consider the 9 Muses, and 9 Bacchuses, as revolving round one Apollo, that is about the splendor of one invisible Sunday. The greater part of this fine passage is preserved by Giraldus, in his Syntagma de Muses, and by Natalis Comes, in his Mythology, but without mentioning the original author. Now if the hymn to the earth, is compared with the hymns to Pluto and Proserpine, the one to Ocean, with that to Thetis, and so of the other elements agreeable to the preceding account, we shall discover a wonderful similitude. And with respect to the celestial spheres, Silenus Bacchus, who, according to the preceding account, should agree with Mercury, is called in these initiations Tauro Omicron Phi, or nourishment, and Mercury, Tauro Omicron Phi Iota Upsilon Chi Epsilon, or nourisher. Venus, who should agree with Lygius Bacchus, is called Capro Upsilon Phi Alpha, or occult, and Rho Alpha Tau Omicron Pi Lambda Kappa Alpha Mu Omicron, or lovely-haired, and Sigma Epsilon Mu Nu Beta Kappa Chi Omicron Iota Omicron Pi Alpha Rho Epsilon Delta Rho Epsilon, or venerable attendant of Bacchus. And Lygius is denominated Kappa Rho Upsilon Psi Gamma Omicron Nu Omicron, or an occult offspring in Kappa Alpha Lambda Lambda Iota Theta Epsilon Iota Rho Alpha, or fair-haired. In like manner Triatericus Bacchus is called Alpha Iota Nu Kappa Rho Upsilon Sigma Epsilon Tau Chi Eta Sigma, or Apollo pouring golden light, which evidently agrees with the sun. Again, Bassarius Bacchus is celebrated as rejoicing in swords and blood, Omicron Sigma Xi Iota Phi Epsilon Sigma Iota Nu Chi Alpha Iota Rho Epsilon Iota Sigma, Delta Alpha Mu Alpha Sigma Iota, Kappa Lambda, which plainly corresponds with Mars, as the hymn to that deity evinces in a particular manner. Sabazius and Jupiter evidently agree, for Sabazius is expressly called Iota #Kappa Rho Omicron Nu Upsilon, son of Saturn. And Amphiatus is celebrated as moving in concert with the circling hours, Upsilon Zeta Omega Nu Kappa Iota Nu Tau Epsilon Chi Omicron Rho Sigma Nu Kappa Upsilon Kappa Lambda Sigma Iota Nu Rho Alpha Iota, which corresponds with Saturn, who is called in these hymns, or the Sun 41. And lastly, Dionysius, who is called in these initiations Erebromus, is denominated Delta Iota Kappa Rho Omega Tau Alpha, or two-horned, which is also an epithet of Pan, or the soul of the world. And thus much for the doctrine of these hymns, so far as is requisite to an introductory dissertation. What farther light we have been able to throw on these mysterious remains of antiquity, will appear in our following notes. If the valuable commentary of Proclus on the Cratylus of Plato was once published, I am persuaded we should find them full of the most recondite antiquity 42, but as this is not to be expected in the present age, the lovers of ancient wisdom will, I doubt not, gratefully accept the preceding and subsequent elucidations. For on a subject so full of obscurity as the present, a glimmering light is as conspicuous, and as agreeable to the eye of the mind, as a small spark in profound darkness is to the corporeal sight. The Initiations of Orpheus. To Musaeus 4:3. Attend Musaeus to my sacred song, and learn what rites to sacrifice belong. Jove I invoke, the earth, and solar light, the moon's pure splendor, and the stars of night. The Neptune, ruler of the sea profound, 5. Dark-haired, whose waves begirt the solid ground. Ceres abundant, and of lovely mien. And Proserpine infernal Pluto's queen. The huntress Jen, and bright Phoebus rays. Far-darting god, the theme of Delphic praise. 10. And Bacchus, honored by the heathen Ly choir. And raging Mars, and Vulcan god of fire. The mighty Power who rose from foam to light. And Pluto potent in the realms of night. With Hebe young, and Hercules the strong, 15. And you to whom the cares of births belong. Justice and piety august I call. And much famed nymphs, and Pan the god of all. To Juno sacred, and to Emry fair. And the chaste muses I address my prayer. 20. The various year, the graces, and the hours. Fair-haired Latona, and Dion's Poweress. Armed Curides, household gods I call. With those who spring from Jove the king of all. Thid gods, the angel of the skies, 25. And righteous Themis, with sagacious eyes. With ancient night, and daylight I implore. And faith, and justice dealing right adore. Saturn and Rhea, and great Thetis too. Hid in a veil of bright celestial blue, 30. I call great ocean, and the beauteous train. Of nymphs, who dwell in chambers of the main. Atlas the strong, and ever in its prime. Vigorous eternity, and endless time. The Stygian pool, and placid gods beside, 35. And various genii, that o'er men preside. Illustrious providence, the noble train. Of demon forms, who fill ethereal plane. Or live in air, in water, earth, or fire. Or deep beneath the solid ground retire. 40. Bacchus and Semele the friends of all. And white Leucothea of the sea I call. Palemon bounteous, and Adrastria great. And sweet-tongued Victory, with success elate. Great Aesculapius, skilled to cure disease, 45. And dread Minerva, whom fierce battles please. Thunders and winds in mighty columns pent. With dreadful roaring struggling hard for vent. Attis, the mother of the Poweress on high. And fair Adonis, never doomed to die, 50. End and beginning he is all to all. These with propitious aid I gently call. And to my holy sacrifice invite. The Power who reigns in deepest hell and night. I call Inodian Hecate, lovely dame, 55-44. Of earthly, watery, and celestial frame. Sepulchral, in a saffron veil arrayed. Pleased with dark ghosts that wander through the shade. Persian, unconquerable huntress hail. 45. The world's key-bearer never doomed to fail, 60. On the rough rock to wander thee delights. Leader and nurse be present to our rites. Propitious grant our just desire success. Accept our homage, and the incense bless. To the goddess Protheri 46. The fumigation from Storax. O venerable goddess, hear my prayer. For labor pains are thy peculiar care. In thee, when stretched upon the bed of grief. The sex as in a mirror view relief. Guard of the race, endued with gentle mind, 5. To helpless youth, benevolent and kind. Benignant nourisher, great nature's key. Belongs to no divinity but thee. Thou dwellst with all immanifest to sight. And solemn festivals are thy delight. 10. Thine is the talk to loose the virgin's zone. And thou in every work art seen and known. With births you sympathize, though pleased to see the numerous offspring of fertility. When racked with nature's pangs and sore distressed, 15. The sex invoke thee, as the soul's sure rest. For thou alone canst give relief to pain. Which art attempts to ease, but tries in vain. Assisting goddess, venerable Power. Who bringst relief in labor's dreadful hour, 20. Hear, blessed Yen, and accept my prayer. And make the infant race thy constant care. Tonight. The fumigation with torches. Night, parent goddess, source of sweet repose. From whom at first both gods and men arose. Here, blessed Venus, decked with starry light, 47. In sleep's deep silence dwelling ebon night. Dreams and soft case attend thy dusky train. 5. Pleased with the lengthened gloom and faithful strain. Dissolving anxious care, the friend of mirth. With darkling coursers riding round the earth. Goddess of phantoms and of shadowy play. Whose drowsy power divides the natural day. 10. By fate's decree you constant send the light. To deepest hell, remote from mortal sight. For dire necessity which not withstands. Invests the world with adamantine bands. Be present, Goddess, to thy suppliants prayer. 15. Desired by all, whom all alike revere. Blessed, benevolent, with friendly aid. Dispel the fears of twilight's dreadful shade. To heaven. The fumigation from frankincense. Great Heaven, whose mighty frame no respite knows. Father of all, from whom the world arose. Here, bounteous parent, source and end of all. Forever whirling round this earthly ball. Abode of gods, whose guardian power surrounds 548. Eternal world with ever-during bounds. Whose ample bosom and encircling folds. The dire necessity of nature holds. Ethereal, earthly, whose all various frame 49. Azure and full of forms, no power can tame. 10. All-seeing Heaven, progenitor of time 50. Forever blessed, deity sublime. Propitious on a novel mystic shine. And crown his wishes with a life divine. To fire. The fumigation from saffron. O ever untamed fire, who reign'st on high. In Jove's dominions ruler of the sky. The glorious sun with dazzling luster bright. And moon and stars from thee derive their light. All taming power, ethereal shining fire. 5. Whose vivid blasts the heat of life inspire. The world's best element, light-bearing power. With starry radiance shining, splendid flower. O hear my suppliant prayer, and may thy frame be ever innocent, serene, and tame. 10. To Protagonists. Or the firstborn. The fumigation from Myrrh. O mighty first begotten, hear my prayer. 51. Twofold, egg-born, and wandering through the air. Bull-roarer, glorying in thy golden wings. 52. From whom the race of gods and mortals springs. Pious, celebrated power. 5. Ineffable, occult, all-shining flower. From eyes obscure thou whipst the gloom of night. All-spreading splendor, pure and holy light. Hence fans called, the glory of the sky. On waving pinions through the world you fly. 10. Priapus, darky-wide splendor, thee I sing. Genial, all-prudent, ever-blessed King. With joyful aspect on our rites divine. And holy sacrifice propitious shine. To the stars. The fumigation from aromatics. With holy voice I call the stars on high. Pure sacred lights and genii of the sky. Celestial stars, the progeny of night. In whirling circles beaming far your light. Refulgent rays around the heavens ye throw. 5. Eternal fires, the source of all below. With flames significant of fate ye shine. And aptly rule for men a path divine. In 7 bright zones ye run with wandering flames. And heaven and earth compose your lucid frames. 1053. With course unwearied, pure and fiery bright. Forever shining through the veil of night. Hail twinkling, joyful, ever wakeful fires. Propitious shine on all my just desires. These sacred rites regard with conscious rays. 15. And end our works devoted to your praise. To the sun. The fumigation from frankincense and manna. Here golden Titan, whose eternal eye. With broad survey, illumines all the sky. Self-born, unwearied in diffusing light. And to all eyes the mirror of delight. Lord of the seasons, with thy fiery car 5. And leaping coursers, beaming light from far. With thy right hand the source of morning light. 54. And with thy left the father of the night. Agile and vigorous, venerable sun. Fiery and bright around the heavens you run. 10. Foe to the wicked, but the good man's guide. O'er all his steps propitious you preside. With various founding, golden lyre, 'tis mine. To fill the world with harmony divine. Father of ages, guide of prosperous deeds. 15. The world's commander, borne by lucid steeds. Immortal Jove, all-searching, bearing light. 55. Source of existence, pure and fiery bright. Bearer of fruit, almighty Lord of years. Agile and warm. Whom every power reveres. 20. Great eye of nature and the starry skies. Doomed with immortal flames to set and rise. Dispensing justice, lover of the stream. The world's great despot, and o'er all supreme. Faithful defender, and the eye of right. 25:56. Of steeds the ruler, and of life the light. With founding whip 4 fiery steeds you guide. When in the car of day you glorious ride. Propitious on these mystic labors shine. And bless thy suppliants with a life divine. 30. To the moon. 57. The fumigation from aromatics. Here, goddess queen, diffusing silver light. Bull-horned and wandering through the gloom of night. 58. With stars surrounded, and with circuit wide. Night's torch extending, through the heavens you ride. Female and male with borrowed rays you shine. 559. And now full-orbed, now tending to decline. Mother of ages, fruit-producing moon. Whose amber orb makes night's reflected noon. Lover of horses, splendid, queen of night. All-seeing power bedecked with starry light. 10. Lover of vigilance, the foe of strife. In peace rejoicing, and a prudent life. Fair lamp of night, its ornament and friend. Who gives to nature's works their destined end. 60. Queen of the stars, all-wife Diana hail. 15. Decked with a graceful robe and shining veil. Come, blessed goddess, prudent, starry, bright. Come moony lamp with chaste and splendid light. Shine on these sacred rites with prosperous rays. And pleased accept thy suppliants' mystic praise. To nature. 61. The fumigation from aromatics. Nature, all-parent, ancient, and divine. O much mechanic mother, art is thine. Heaven-ly, abundant, venerable queen. In every part of thy dominion seen. Untamed, all-taming, ever-splendid light. 5. All-ruling, honored, and supremely bright. Immortal, firstborn, ever still the same. Nocturnal, starry, shining, glorious dame. Thy feet still traces in a circling course. By thee are turned, with unremitting force. 10. Pure ornament of all the powers divine. Finite and infinite alike you shine. 62. To all things common and in all things known. Yet incommunicable and alone. Without a father of thy wondrous frame. 15. Thyself the Father whence thy essence came. All flourishing, connecting, mingling soul. Leader and ruler of this mighty whole. Life-bearer, all-sustaining, various named. And for commanding grace and beauty famed. 20. Justice, supreme in might, whose general sway. The waters of the restless deep obey. Ethereal, earthly, for the pious glad. Sweet to the good, but bitter to the bad. All-wife, all-bounteous, provident, divine. 25. A rich increase of nutriment is thine. Father of all, great nurse, and mother kind. Abundant, blessed, all-spermatic mind. Mature, impetuous, from whose fertile seeds. And plastic hand, this changing scene proceeds. 30. All-parent power, to mortal eyes unseen. Eternal, moving, all-sagacious Queen. By thee the world, whose parts in rapid flow, 63. Like swift descending streams, no respite know. On an eternal hinge, with steady course 35. Is world, with matchless, unremitting force. Throned on a circling car, thy mighty hand holds and directs, the reins of wide command. Various thy essence, honored, and the best. Of judgment too, the general end and test. 40. Intrepid, fatal, all-subduing dame. Life everlasting, Parca, breathing flame. Immortal, Providence, the world is thine. And thou art all things, Architect divine. O blessed Goddess, hear thy suppliants pray are, 45. And make my future life, thy constant care. Give plenteous seasons, and sufficient wealth. And crown my days with lasting, peace and health. To Pan 64. The fumigation from various odors. I call strong Pan, the substance of the whole. Ethereal, marine, earthly, general soul. Immortal fire, for all the world is thine. And all are parts of thee, O power divine. Come, blessed Pan, whom rural haunts delight, 5. Come, leaping, agile, wandering, starry light. The hours and seasons, wait thy high command. And round thy throne in graceful order stand. Goat-footed, horned, bacchanalian Pan. Fanatic power, from whom the world began, 10. Whose various parts by thee inspurred, combine. In endless dance and melody divine. In thee a refuge from our fears we find. Those fears peculiar to the human kind. These shepherds, streams of water, goats rejoice, 15. Thou lovest the chase, and echo's secret voice, 65. The sportive nymphs, thy every step attend, 66. And all thy works fulfill their destined end. O all-producing power, much famed, divine. The world's great ruler, rich increase is thine. 20. All fertile paean, heaven ly splendor pure. In fruits rejoicing, and in caves obscure. 67. True serpent-horn Jove, whose dreadful rage 68. When roused, 'tis hard for mortals to assuage. By thee the earth wide-bosomed, deep and long, 25. Stands on a basis permanent and strong. Unwearied waters of the rolling sea. Profoundly spreading, yield to thy decree. Old ocean too reveres thy high command. Whose liquid arms begirt the solid land. 30. The spacious air, whose nutrimental fire. And vivid blasts, the heat of life inspire. The lighter frame of fire, whose sparkling eye shines on the summit of the azure sky. Submit alike to thee, whole general sway 35. All parts of matter. Various formed obey. All natures change through thy protecting care. And all mankind thy liberal bounties share. For these where'er dispersed through boundless space. Still find thy providence support their race. 40. Come, Bacchanalian, blessed power draw near. Fanatic Pan, thy humble suppliant hear. Propitious to these holy rites attend. And grant my life may meet a prosperous end. Drive panic fury too, wherever found, 55. From humankind, to earth's remotest bound. To Hercules. The fumigation from frankincense. Here, powerful, Hercules untamed and strong. To whom vast hands, and mighty works belong. Almighty Titan, prudent and benign. Of various forms, eternal and divine. Father of time, the theme of general praise, 5. Ineffable, audared in various ways. Magnanimous, in divination skilled. And in the athletic labors of the field. 'Tis thine strong archer, all things to devour. Supreme, all-helping, all-producing power. 10. To thee mankind as their deliverer pray. Whose arm can chase the savage tribes away. You wearied, earth's best blossom, offspring fair. To whom calm peace, and peaceful works are dear. 69. Self-born, with primogenial fires you shine, 1570. And various names and strength of heart are thine. Thy mighty head supports the morning light. And bears untamed, the silent gloomy night. From east to west endued with strength divine. 12 glorious labors to absolve is thine, 20. Supremely skilled, thou reign'st in heaven's abodes. Thyself a god amidst immortal gods. With arms unshaken, infinite, divine. Come, blessed power, and to our rites incline. The mitigations of disease convey, 25. And drive disastrous maladies away. Come, shake the branch with thy almighty arm. Dismiss thy darts and noxious fate disarm. To Saturn. The fumigation from Storax. Ethereal Father, mighty Titan, here, 71. Great fire of gods and men, whom all revere. Endued with various counsel, pure and strong. To whom perfection and decrease belong. Consumed by thee all forms that hourly die, 5. By thee restored, their former place supply. The world immense in everlasting chains. Strong and ineffable thy power contains. Father of vast eternity, divine. O mighty Saturn, various speech is thine, 10. Blossom of earth and of the starry skies. Husband of Rhea, and Prometheus' wife. Obstetric nature, venerable root. From which the various forms of being shoot. No parts peculiar can thy power enclose, 15. Diffused through all, from which the world arose. O, best of beings, of a subtle mind. Propitious here to holy prayers inclined. The sacred rites benevolent attend. And grant a blameless life, a blessed end. To Rhea 72. The fumigation from aromatics. Daughter of great Protagonist, divine, 73. Illustrious Rhea, to my prayer incline. Who drivest thy holy car with speed along. Drawn by fierce lions, terrible and strong. 74. Mother of Jove, whose mighty arm can wield 5. Avenging bolt, and shake the dreadful shield. Drum beating, frantic, of a splendid mien, 75. Brass sounding, honored, Saturn's blessed queen. Thou joyst in mountains and tumultuous fight. And mankind's horrid howlings, thee delight. 10. War's parent, mighty, of majestic frame. Deceitful Saviour, liberating Dame. 76. Mother of gods and men, from whom the earth and lofty heavens derive their glorious birth. Ethereal gales, the deeply spreading sea 15. Goddess aerial formed, proceed from thee. Come, pleased with wanderings, blessed and divine. With peace attended on our labors shine. Bring rich abundance, and wherever found. Drive dire disease, to earth's remotest bound. 20. To Jupiter. The fumigation from Storax. O Jove much honored, Jove supremely great. To thee our holy rites we consecrate. Our prayers and expiations, King divine. For all things round thy head exalted shine. The earth is thine, and mountains swelling high, 5. The sea profound, and all within the sky. Saturnian king, descending from above. Magnanimous, commanding, sceptred Jove. All parent, principle and end of all. Whose power almighty, shakes this earthly ball, 10. Even nature trembles at thy mighty nod. Loud sounding, armed with lightning, thundering God. Source of abundance, purifying King. O various formed from whom all nature spring. Propitious hear my prayer, give blameless health, 15. With peace divine, and necessary wealth. To Juno 77. The fumigation from aromatics. O royal Juno of majestic mien. Aerial formed, divine, Jove's blessed queen. throned in the bosom of Carolean air. The race of mortals is thy constant care. The cooling gales thy power alone inspires, which nourish life, which every life desires. Mother of clouds and winds, from thee alone, producing all things, mortal life is known. All natures share thy temperament divine, and universal sway alone is thine. 10. With founding blasts of wind, the swelling sea, and rolling rivers roar, when shook by thee. Come, blessed goddess, famed almighty queen, with aspect kind, rejoicing and serene. To Neptune. The fumigation from Myrrh. Here, Neptune, ruler of the sea profound, whose liquid grasp begirts the solid ground, who, at the bottom of the stormy main, dark and deep-bosomed, holds thy watery reign. Thy awful hand the brazen trident bears, and ocean's utmost bound, thy will reveres. Thee I invoke, whose steeds the foam divide, from whose dark locks the briny waters glide, whose voice loud founding through the roaring deep, drives all its billows, in a raging heap. 10. When fiercely riding through the boiling sea, thy horse command the trembling waves obey. Earth shaking, dark-haired god, the liquid plains. The third division, fate to thee ordains. 'Tis thine, Carolean demon, to survey. Well pleased the monsters of the ocean play. 15. Confirm earth's basis, and with prospero scales waft ships along, and swell the spacious sails. Add gentle peace, and fair-haired health beside, and pour abundance in a blameless tide. 20. To Pluto. Pluto, magnanimous, whose realms profound are fixed beneath the firm and solid ground, in the Tartarian plains remote from fight, and wrapped forever in the depths of night. Terrestrial Jove, thy sacred ear incline. 578. And, pleased, accept thy mystics hymn divine. Earth's keys to thee, illustrious king, belong. 79. Its secret gates unlocking, deep and strong. 'Tis thine, abundant annual fruits to bear, for needy mortals are thy constant care. 10. To thee, great king, Avernus is assigned, the seat of gods, and basis of mankind. Thy throne is fixed in Hades' dismal plains, distant, unknown to rest, where darkness reigns, where, destitute of breath, pale spectres dwell. 15. In endless, dire, inexorable hell, and in dread Acheron, whose depths obscure earth's stable roots eternally secure. O mighty demon, whose decision dread the future fate determines of the dead. 20. With captive Proserpine, through grassy plains, drawn in a four-yacht car with loosened reins, wrapped o'er the deep, impelled by love, you flew, till Eleusinna's city rose to view. There, in a Wandrouse cave obscure and deep. 25. The sacred maid secure from search you keep, the cave of Athos, whose wide gates display an entrance to the kingdoms void of day. Of unapparent works, thou art alone, the dispensator, visible and known. 30. O power all-ruling, holy, honored light, these sacred poets and their hymns delight. Propitious to thy mystics' works incline, rejoicing come, for holy rites are thine. To thundering Jove. The fumigation from Storax. O Father Jove, who shaxed with fiery light the world deep-sounding from thy lofty height. From thee, proceeds ethereal lightning's blaze, flashing around intolerable rays. Thy sacred thunders shake the blessed abodes. 5. The shining regions of immortal gods. Thy power divine, the flaming lightning shrouds, with dark investiture, in fluid clouds. 'Tis thine to brandish thunders strong and dire, to scatter storms, and dreadful darts of fire. 10. With roaring flames involving all around, and bolts of thunder of tremendous sound. Thy rapid dart can raise the hair upright, and shake the heart of man with wild affright. Sudden, unconquered, holy, thundering God. 15. With noise unbounded, flying all abroad. With all-devouring force, entire and strong. Horrid, untamed, thou roll'st the flames along. Rapid, ethereal bolt, descending fire. The earth all-parent, trembles at thy ire. 20. The sea all-shining. And each beast that hears the sound terrific, with dread horror fears. When nature's face is bright with flashing fire, and in the heavens resound thy thunders dire. Thy thunders white, the azure garments tear, and burst the veil of all surrounding air. O Jove, all blessed, may thy wrath severe, hurled in the bosom of the deep appear, and on the tops of mountains be revealed. For thy strong arm is not from us concealed. 30. Propitious to these sacred rites incline, and crown my wishes with a life divine. Add royal health, and gentle peace beside, with equal reason, for my constant guide. To Jove, as the author of lightning, the fumigation from frankincense and manna, I call the mighty, holy, splendid light. Aerial, dreadful sounding, fiery bright. Flaming, aerial light, with angry voice. Lightning through lucid clouds with horrid noise. Untamed, to whom resentments dire belong. Pure, holy power, all-parent, great and strong. Come, and benevolent these rites attend, and grant my days a peaceful, blessed end. To the clouds. The fumigation from Myrrh. Aerial clouds, through heaven's resplendent plains. Who wander, parents of prolific rains. Who nourish fruits, whose watery frames are hurled by winds impetuous, round the mighty world. All thundering, lion roaring, flashing fire. 5. In air's wide bosom, bearing thunders dire. Impelled by every stormy, sounding gale. With rapid course, along the skies ye fail. With blowing winds your watery frames I call. On Mother Earth with fruitful showers to fall. To the sea, or Tethys A.D. The fumigation from frankincense and manna. Tethys I call, with eyes Carolean bright. Hid in a veil obscure from human sight. Great ocean's empress, wandering through the deep. And pleased with gentle gales, the earth to sweep. Whose blessed waves in swift succession go. 5. And lash the rocky shore with endless flow. Delighting in the sea serene to play. In ships exulting and the watery way. Mother of Venus, and of clouds obscure. Great nurse of beasts, and source of fountains pure. 10. O venerable goddess, hear my prayer. And make benevolent my life thy care. Send, blessed queen, to ships a prosperous breeze. And waft them safely o'er the stormy seas. To Nereus. The fumigation from Myrrh. O thou, who doth the roots of ocean keep. In seats Carolean, demon of the deep. With 50 nymphs, attending in thy train. Fair virgin artists, glorying through the main. The dark foundation of the rolling sea. 5. And earth's wide bounds belong much fame to thee. Great demon, source of all, whose power can make the earth's unmeasured, holy basis shake. When blustering winds in secret caverns pent by thee excited, struggle hard for vent. 10. Come, blessed Nereus, listen to my prayer. And cease to shake the earth with wrath severe. Send on our sacred rites abundant health. With peace divine and necessary wealth. To the Nereids. The fumigation from aromatics. Daughters of Nereus, resident in caves. Merged deep in ocean, sporting through the waves. Fanatic 50 nymphs, who through the main delight to follow in the Triton's train. Rejoicing close behind their cars to keep. 5. Whose forms half wild, are nourished by the deep. With other nymphs of different degree. Leaping and wandering through the liquid sea. Bright, watery dolphins, sonorous and gay. Well pleased to sport with bacchanalian play. 10. Nymphs beauteously wide, whom sacrifice delights. Send rich abundance on our mystic rites. For you at first disclosed the rites divine. Of holy Bacchus and of Proserpine. Of fair Calliope from whom I spring, 15. And of Apollo bright, the Muses' king. To Proteus 81. The fumigation from Storax. Proteus I call, whom fate decrees, to keep the keys which lock the chambers of the deep. Firstborn, by whose illustrious power alone all nature's principles are clearly shown. Matter to change with various forms is thine, 5. Matter unformed, capacious, and divine. All honored, prudent, whose sagacious mind knows all that was, and is, of every kind. With all that shall be in succeeding time. So vast thy wisdom, wondrous, and sublime, 10. For all things nature first to thee consigned. And in thy essence omniform confined. Come, blessed Father, to our rites attend. And grant our happy lives a prosperous end. To the earth 82. The fumigation from every kind of seed, except beans and aromatics. O Goddess, earth, of gods and men the source. Endued with fertile, all-destroying force. All parent, bounding, whose prolific powers produce a store of beauteous fruits and flowers. All various made, eternal world strong base 5. Immortal, blessed, crowned with every grace. From whose wide womb, as from an endless root, fruits, many formed, mature and grateful shoot. Deep bosomed, blessed, pleased with grassy plains. Sweet to the smell, and with prolific rains. 10. All flowery demon, center of the world. Around thy orb, the beauteous stars are hurled. With rapid whirl, eternal and divine. Whose frames with matchless skill and wisdom shine. Come, blessed Goddess, listen to my prayer, 15. And make increase of fruits thy constant care. With fertile seasons in thy train, draw near. And with propitious mind thy suppliant hear. To the Mother of the Gods. The fumigation from a variety of odoriferous substances. Mother of Gods, great nurse of all, draw near. Divinely honored, and regard my prayer. Throned on a car, by lions drawn along. By bull-destroying lions, swift and strong. Thou sway'st the scepter of the pole divine. 583. And the world's middle seat, much famed, is thine. Hence earth is thine, and needy mortals share their constant food, from thy protecting care. From thee at first both gods and men arose. From thee, the sea and every river flows. 10. Vesta, and source of good, thy name we find. To mortal men rejoicing to be kind. For every good to give, thy soul delights. Come, mighty power, propitious to our rites. All taming, blessed, Phrygian Saviour, come, 15. Saturn's great queen, rejoicing in the drum. Celestial, ancient, life-supporting maid. Fanatic goddess, give thy suppliant aid. With joyful aspect on our incense shine. And, pleased, accept the sacrifice divine. To Mercury. The fumigation from frankincense. Hermes, draw near, and to my prayer incline. Angel of Jove, and Maia's son divine. Studious of contests, ruler of mankind. With heart almighty, and a prudent mind. Celestial messenger, of various skill, 5. Whose powerful arts could watchful Argus kill. With winged feet, 'tis thine through air to course. O friend of man, and prophet of discourse. Great life supporter, to rejoice is thine. In arts gymnastic. And in fraud divine, 10. With power endued all language to explain. Of care the loosena, and the source of gain. Whose hand contains of blameless peace the rod. Carushan, blessed, profitable God. Of various speech, whose aid in works we find, 15. And in necessities to mortals kind. Dire weapon of the tongue, which men revere. Be present, Hermes, and thy suppliant here. Assist my works, conclude my life with peace. Give graceful speech, and me memories increase. 20. To Proserpine. A hymn. Daughter of Jove, almighty and divine. Come, blessed queen, and to these rites incline. Only begotten, Pluto's honored wife 84. O venerable goddess, source of life. 'Tis thine in earth's profundities to dwell. 5. Fast by the wide and dismal gates of hell. Jove's holy offspring, of a beauteous mien. Fatal, with lovely locks, infernal queen. Source of the Furies, whose blessed frame proceeds from Jove's ineffable and secret seeds. 10. Mother of Bacchus. Sonorous, divine. And many-formed, the parent of the vine. The dancing hours attend thee, essence bright. All-ruling virgin, bearing heaven ly light. Illustrious, horned, of a bounteous mind. 13. Alone desert by those of mortal kind. O, vernal queen, whom grassy plains delight. Sweet to the smell, and pleasing to the sight. Whose holy form in budding fruits we view. Earth's vigorous offspring of a various hue. 20. Espest in autumn, life and death alone. 85. To wretched mortals from thy power is known. For thine the task according to thy will. 86. Life to produce, and all that lives to kill. Here, blessed goddess, send a rich increase. 25. Of various fruits from earth, with lovely peace. Send health with gentle hand, and crown my life with blessed abundance, free from noisy strife. Last in extreme old age the prey of death. Dismiss we willing to the realms beneath. 30. To thy fair palace, and the blissful plains. Where happy spirits dwell, and Pluto reigns. To Bacchus. The fumigation from Storax. Bacchus I call, loud-sounding and divine. Fanatic God, a twofold shape is thine. Thy various names and attributes I sing. O, firstborn, thrice begotten, Bakshik king. 87. Rural, ineffable, two-formed, obscure. 5. Two-horned, with ivy crowned. Yuyan, pure. Bull effacete, and martial, bearer of the vine. Endued with counsel prudent and divine. Triennial, whom the leaves of vines adorn. Of Jove and Proserpine, occultly born. 10. Immortal demon, hear my suppliant voice. Give me in blameless plenty to rejoice. And listen gracious to my mystic prayer. Surrounded with thy choir of nurses fair. To the Cuorides. A hymn. Leaping Cuorides, who with dancing feet and circling measures, armed footsteps beat. Whose bosoms mad, fanatic transports fire. Who move in rhythm to the founding lyre. Who traces death when lightly leaping tread. Arm-bearers, strong defenders. Rulers dread. Propitious omens, guards of Proserpine. 88. Preserving rights, mysterious and divine. Come, and benevolent my words attend. In herds rejoicing, and my life defend. 10. To Pallas. A hymn. Only begotten, noble race of Jove. Blessed and fierce, who joiced in caves to rove. 89. O, warlike Pallas, whose illustrious kind. Ineffable and effable we find. Magnanimous and famed, the rocky height. 5. And groves. And shady mountains thee delight. In arms rejoicing, who with furies dire. And wild, the souls of mortals dost inspire. Gymnastic virgin of terrific mind. Dire Gorgon's bane, unmarried, blessed, kind. 10. Mother of arts, imperious, understood. Rage to the wicked. Wisdom to the good. Female and male, the arts of war are thine. Fanatic, much-formed dragoness, divine, 90. O'er the Phlegrean giants roused to ire, 1591. Thy coursers driving, with destruction dire. Sprung from the head of Jove, of splendid mien. Purger of evils, all-victorious queen. Hear me, O goddess, when to thee I pray. With supplicating voice both night and day, 20. And in my latest hour, peace and health. Propitious times, and necessary wealth. And, ever present, be thy Votieri's aid. O, much implored, art's parent. Blue-eyed maid. To victory. The fumigation from manna. O powerful victory, by men desired. With adverse breasts to dreadful fury furred. Thee I invoke, whose might alone can quell contending rage, and molestation fell. 'Tis thine in battle to confer the crown, 5. The victor's prize. The mark of sweet renown. For thou are you else all things, victory divine. And glorious strife, and joyful shouts are thine. Come, mighty goddess, and thy suppliant bless. With sparkling eye, elated with success. 10. May deeds illustrious thy protection claim. And find, led on by the immortal fame. To Apollo. The fumigation from manna. Blessed Paean, come, propitious to my prayer. Illustrious Power, whom Memphian tribes revere. Slayer of Tityus, and the god of health. Lycorian Phoebus, fruitful source of wealth. Spermatic, golden Elyard, the field from thee 5. Receives its constant, rich fertility. Titanic, Grunian, Sminthian, thee I sing, 92. Python destroying, hallowed, Delphian king. Rural, light-bearer, and the muse's head. Noble and lovely, armed with arrows dread, 10. Far-darting, Bacchian, twofold, and divine, 93. Power far diffused. And course oblique is thine. O, Delian king, whose light-producing eye views all within, and all beneath the sky. Whose locks are gold, whose oracles are sure, 15. Who, omens good revealst, and precepts pure. Hear me entreating for the human kind. Hear. And be present with benignant mind. For thou surveyst this boundless ether all. And every part of this terrestrial ball 20. Abundant, blessed, and thy piercing sight extends beneath the gloomy, silent night. Beyond the darkness, starry wide, profound. The stable roots, deep fixed by thee are found. The world's wide bounds, all flourishing are thine, 25. Thyself all the source and end divine. 'Tis thine all nature's music to inspire. With various sounding, harmonizing lyre. Now the last string thou tuneft to sweet accord, 94. Divinely warbling now the highest chord, 30. Immortal golden lyre, now touched by thee. Responsive yields a Dorian melody. All nature's tribes to thee their difference owe. And changing seasons from thy music flow. Hence, mixed by thee in equal parts, advance 35. Summer and winter in alternate dance. This claims the highest, that the lowest string. The Dorian measure tunes the lovely spring. Hence by mankind, pan-royal, two-horned nound, 95. Emitting whistling winds through syrinx fammed. 4096. Since to thy care, the figured seals consigned 97. Which stamps the world with forms of every kind. Hear me, blessed Power, and in these rites rejoice. And save thy mystics with a suppliant voice. Tolatona. The fumigation from Myrrh. Dark-veiled Latona, much invoked queen. Twin-bearing goddess, of a noble mien. Caantis great, a mighty mind is thine. Offspring prolific, blessed of Jove divine. Phoebus proceeds from thee, the god of light, 5. And Yen fair, whom winged darts delight. She in Ortygia's honored regions born. In Delos he, which mountains high adorn. Hear me, O goddess, with propitious mind. And end these holy rites, with aspect kind. 10. To Diana. The fumigation from manna. Hear me, Jove's daughter, celebrated queen. Bacchian and Titan, of a noble mien. In darts rejoicing and on all to shine. Torch-bearing goddess, Dictina divine. O'er births presiding, and thyself a maid, 598. To labor pangs imparting ready aid. Dissolver of the zone and wrinkled care. Fierce huntress, glorying in the sylvan war. Swift in the course, in dreadful arrows skilled. Wandering by night. Rejoicing in the field, 10. Of manly form, erect, of bounteous mind. Illustrious demon, nurse of humankind. Immortal, earthly, bane of monsters fell. 'Tis thine. Blessed maid, on woody hills to dwell. Foe of the stag, whom woods and dogs delight, 15. In endless youth who flourish fair and bright. O, universal queen, august, divine. A various form, Sidonian power, is thine. Dread guardian goddess, with benignant mind. Auspicious, come to mystic rites incline 20. Give earth a store of beauteous fruits to bear. Send gentle peace. And health with lovely hair. And to the mountains drive disease and care. To the Titans 99. The fumigation from frankincense. O mighty Titans, who from heaven and earth derive your noble and illustrious birth. Our fathers' fires, in Tartarus profound. Who dwell, deep merged beneath the solid ground. Fountains and principles, from whom began 5. Afflicted, miserable. Race of man. Who not alone in earth's retreats abide. But in the ocean and the air reside. Since every species from your nature flows. Which all prolific, nothing barren knows, 10. Avert your rage, if from infernal seats. One of your tribe should visit our retreats. To the curate 100. The fumigation from frankincense. Brass-beating Salians, ministers of Mars. Who guard his arms the instruments of wars. Whose blessed frames, heaven, earth, and sea compose. And from whose breath all animals arose. Who dwell in Samothracia's sacred ground. 5. Defending mortals through the sea profound. Deathless Curides, by your power alone. Initial rights to men at first were shown. Who shake old ocean thundering to the sky. And stubborn oaks with branches waving high. 10. 'Tis yours in glittering arms the earth to beat. With lightly leaping, rapid, sounding feet. Then every beast the noise terrific flies. And the loud tumult wanders through the skies. The dust your feet excites with matchless force, 15. Flies to the clouds amidst their whirling course. And every flower of variegated hue grows in the dancing motion formed by you. Immortal demons, to your powers consigned. The talk to nourish and destroy mankind. 20. When rushing furious with loud tumult dire. O'erwhelmed they perish in your dreadful ire. And live replenished with the balmy air. The food of life, committed to your care. When shook by you, the seas, with wild uproar, 25. Wide-spreading, and profoundly whirling, roar. The concave heavens, with echo's voice resound. When leaves with ruffling noise bestrew the ground. Curides, Carabants, ruling kings. Whose praise the land of Samothracia sings, 30. From Jove descended, whose immortal breath sustains the soul, and wafts her back from death. Aerial formed, much famed, in heaven ye shine. Twofold, in heaven all lucid and divine. Blowing, serene, from whom abundance springs, 35. Nurses of seasons, fruit-producing kings. To Charybdis 101. The fumigation from frankincense. The mighty ruler of this earthly ball. Forever flowing, to these rites I call. Martial and blessed, unseen by mortal sight. Preventing fears, and pleased with gloomy night. Hence, fancy's terrors are by thee allayed. 5. All various king, who lovest the desart shade. Each of thy brothers killing, blood is thine. Twofold curate. Many-formed, divine. By thee transmuted Ceres' body pure. Became a dragon savage and obscure. 10. Avert thy anger, hear me when I pray. And by fixed fate, drive fancy's fears away. To Ceres. The fumigation from storax. O universal mother, Ceres famed. August, the source of wealth, and various named. 102. Great nurse, all bounteous, blessed and divine. Who joyst in peace, to nourish corn is thine. Goddess of seed, of fruits abundant, fair. 5. Harvest and threshing are thy constant care. Who dwellst in Eleusin's seats returred. Lovely, delightful queen, by all desired. Nurse of all mortals, whose benignant mind. First ploughing oxen to the yoke confined. 10. And gave to men, what nature's wants require. With plenteous means of bliss which all desire. In verdure flourishing in honor bright. Assessor of great Bacchus, bearing light. Rejoicing in the reaper's sickles, kind. 15. Whose nature lucid, earthly, pure, we find. Prolific, venerable, nurse divine. Thy daughter loving, holy Proserpine. A car with dragons yacht, 'tis thine to guide. 103. And orgies singing round thy throne to ride. 20. Only begotten, much producing queen. All flowers are thine and fruits of lovely green. Bright goddess, come, with summer's rich increase. Swelling and pregnant, leading smiling peace. Come, with fair concord and imperial health. 25. And join with these a needful store of wealth. To the Ceralian mother. The fumigation from aromatics. Ceralian queen, of celebrated name. From whom both men, and gods immortal came. Who widely wandering once, oppressed with grief. In Eleusin's valley foundst relief. Discovering Proserpine thy daughter pure. 5. In dread Avernus, dismal and obscure. A sacred youth while through the world you stray. Bacchus, attending leader of the way. The holy marriage of terrestrial Jove. Relating, while oppressed with grief you rove. 10. Come, much invoked, and to these rites inclined. Thy mystic suppliant bless, with favoring mind. To Mesas. The fumigation from storax. Call Thesmophorus 104, spermatic god. Of various names, who bears the leafy rod. Mesas, ineffable, pure, sacred queen. Twofold Iacchus, male and female seen. Illustrous, whether to rejoice is thine. In incense offered, in the fane divine. 105. Or if in Phrygia most thy soul delights. Performing with thy mother sacred rites. Or if the land of Cyprus is thy care. Well pleased to dwell with Cytherea fair. 10. Or if exulting in the fertile plains. With thy dark mother Isis, where she reigns. 106. With nurses pure attended, near the flood. Of sacred Egypt, thy divine abode. Wherever resident, blessed power attend. 15. And with benignant mind these labors end. To the seasons. The fumigation from aromatics. Daughters of Jove and Themis, seasons bright. Justice, and blessed peace, and lawful right. Vernal and grassy, vivid, holy poweress. Whose balmy breath exhales in lovely flowers. All colored seasons, rich increase your care. 5. Circling. Forever flourishing and fair. Invested with a veil of shining dew. A flowery veil delightful to the view. Attending Proserpine, when back from night. The fates and graces lead her up to light. 10. When in a band harmonious they advance. And joyful round her, form the solemn dance. With Ceres triumphing, and Jove divine. Propitious come, and on our incense shine. Give earth a blameless store of fruits to bear. 15. And make a novel mystic's life your care. To Semele. The fumigation from Storax. Cadmean goddess, universal queen. Thee, Semele I call, of beauteous mien. Deep-bosomed, lovely flowing locks are thine. Mother of Bacchus, joyful and divine. The mighty offspring, whom love's thunder bright. 5. Forked immature, and frightened into light. Born from the deathless councils, secret, high. Of Jove Saturnian. Regent of the sky. Whom Proserpine permits to view the light. And visit mortals from the realms of night. 10. Constant attending on the sacred rites. And feast triennial, which thy soul delights. When thy son's wondrous birth mankind relate. And secrets deep, and holy celebrate. Now I invoke thee, great Cadmean queen. 15. To bless these rites with countenance serene. To Dionysius Basarius Triennalis 107. A hymn. Come, blessed Dionysius, various named. Bulla facit, begot from thunder, Bacchus famed. Bessarian god, of universal might. Whom swords, and blood, and sacred rage delight. In heaven rejoicing, mad, loud-sounding god. 5. Furious inspirer, bearer of the rod. By gods revered, who dwellst with humankind. Propitious come. With much rejoicing mind. To Lichnitus 108 Bacchus. The fumigation from manna. Lichniton Bacchus, bearer of the vine. Thee I invoke to bless these rites divine. Florid and gay, of nymphs the blossom bright. And of fair Venus, goddess of delight. 'Tis thine mad footsteps with mad nymphs to beat. 5. Dancing through groves with lightly leaping feet. From Jove's high counsels nursed by Proserpine. And born the dread of all the powers divine. Come, blessed power, regard thy suppliant's voice. Propitious come, and in these rites rejoice. 10. To Bacchus Paritionius 109. The fumigation from aromatics. Bacchus Paritionius, hear my prayer. Who madst the house of Cadmus once thy care. With matchless force, his pillars twining round. When burning thunders shook the solid ground. In flaming, founding torrents borne along. 5. Propped by thy grasp indissolubly strong. Come mighty Bacchus to these rites inclined. And bless thy suppliants with rejoicing mind. To Sabazius. The fumigation from aromatics. Hear me, illustrious father, demon famed. Great Saturn's offspring, and Sabazius named. Inserting Bacchus, bearer of the vine. And founding God, within thy thigh divine. That when mature, the Dionysian god 5. Might burst the bands of his concealed abode. And come to sacred Molus, his delight. Where Ippa dwells. All beautiful and bright. Come blessed Phrygian god, the king of all. And aid thy mystics, when on thee they call. 10. To IPPA 110. The fumigation from Storax. Great nurse of Bacchus, to my prayer incline. For holy Sabu's secret rites are thine. The mystic rites of Bacchus nightly choirs. Compassed of sacred, loud resounding fires. Hear me, terrestrial mother, mighty queen. 5. Whether on Phrygia's holy mountain 111 seen. Or if to dwell in Molus thee delights. With holy aspect come, and bless these rites. To Lygius Linnaeus. A hymn. Hear me, Jove's son, blessed Bacchus, god of wine. Born of two mothers, honored and divine. Lysian, Yian 112 Bacchus, various named. Of gods the offspring secret, holy, famed. Fertile and nourishing whose liberal care 5. Earth's fruits increases, flourishing and fair. Sounding, magnanimous, Linean power. O various formed, Medicanal, holy flower. Mortals in thee, repose from labor find. Delightful charm, desert by all mankind, 10. Fair-haired Yian, Bromian, joyful god. Lysian, invested with the leafy rod. To these our rites, benignant power incline. When favoring men, or when on gods you shine. Be present to thy mystic suppliant prayer, 15. Rejoicing come, and fruits abundant bear. To the nymphs. The fumigation from aromatics. Nymphs, who from ocean stream derive your birth. Who dwell in liquid caverns of the earth. Nurses of Bacchus' secret coursing power. Who fruits sustain, and nourish every flower. Earthly, rejoicing, who in meadows dwell, 5. And caves and dens. Whose depths extend to hell. Holy, oblique, who swiftly soar through air. Fountains and dews, and mazy streams your care. Seen and unseen, who joy with wanderings wide. And gentle course, through flowery valleys to glide. 10. With Pan exulting on the mountain's height. Loud founding, mad, whom rocks and woods delight. Nymphs Odyrous, robed in white, whose streams exhale. The breeze refreshing, and the balmy gale. With goats and pastures pleased, and beasts of prey, 15. Nurses of fruits, unconscious of decay. In cold rejoicing, and to cattle kind. Sportive through ocean wandering unconfined. Nisian, fanatic nymphs, whom oaks delight. Lovers of spring. Paeonian virgins bright. 20. With Bacchus, and with Ceres, hear my prayer. And to mankind abundant favor bear. Propitious listen to your suppliant's voice. Come, and benignant in these rites rejoice. Give plenteous seasons, and sufficient wealth, 25. And pour. In lasting streams, continued health. To Triatericus. The fumigation from aromatics. Bacchus fanatic, much named, blessed, divine. Bullefacete Linean, bearer of the vine. From fire descended, raging, Nisian king. From whom initial ceremonies spring. Lignaton Bacchus, pure and fiery bright, 5. Prudent, crown-bearer, wandering in the night. Pupil of Proserpine, mysterious power. Triple, ineffable, Jove's secret flower. Ericapeus, first begotten named. Of gods the father, and the offspring famed, 10113. Bearing a scepter, leader of the choir. Whose dancing feet, fanatic furies fire. When the triennial band thou dost inspire. Loud sounding, Tages, of a fiery light. Born of 2 mothers, Amphiatus bright, 15. Wandering on mountains, clothed with skins of deer. Apollo, golden rayed, whom all revere. God of the grape with leaves of ivy crowned. Bessarion, lovely, virgin-like, renowned. Come blessed power, regard thy mystic's voice, 10. Propitious come, and in these rites rejoice. To Amphiatus Bacchus. The fumigation from every aromatic except frankincense. Terrestrial Dionysius, hear my prayer. Awak Ned rise with nymphs of lovely hair. Great Amphiatus Bacchus, annual god. Who laid asleep in Proserpine's abode. Didst lull to drowsy and oblivious rest. The rites triennial, and the sacred feast. Which roused again by thee, in graceful ring. Thy nurses round thee mystic anthems sing. When briskly dancing with rejoicing powers. Thou movest in concert with the circling hours. 10. Come, blessed, fruitful, horned, and divine. And on these rites with joyful aspect shine. Accept the general incense and the prayer. And make prolific holy fruits thy care. To Silenus, Satyrus, and the priestesses of Bacchus. The fumigation from manna. Great nurse of Bacchus, to my prayer incline. Silenus, honored by the powers divine. And by mankind at the triennial feast. Illustrious demon, reverent as the best. Holy, august, the source of lawful rights, 5. Rejoicing power, whom vigilance delights. With sylvans dancing ever young and fair. Head of the Bacchic nymphs, who ivy bear. With all thy satyrs on our incense shine. Demons wild formed, and bless the rites divine, 10. Come, rouse to sacred joy thy pupil kin, 114. And brumal nymphs with rites Lenaean bring. Our orgies shining through the night inspire. And bless triumphant power the sacred choir. To Venus. A hymn. Havnly, illustrious, laughter-loving queen. Sea-born, night-loving, of an awful mien. Crafty, from whom necessity first came. Producing, nightly, all-connecting dame. 'Tis thine the world with harmony to join, 51:15. For all things spring from thee, O power divine. The triple fates are ruled by thy decree. And all productions yield alike to thee. Whatever the heavens, encircling all contain. Earth fruit-producing, and the stormy main, 10. Thy sway confesses, and obeys thy nod. Awful attendant of the brumal god. Goddess of marriage, charming to the sight. Mother of loves, whom banquetings delight. Source of persuasion, secret, favoring queen, 15. Illustrious born, apparent and unseen. Spousal, lupercal, and to men inclined. Prolific, most desert, life-giving. Kind. Great scepter-bearer of the gods, 'tis thine. Mortals in necessary bands to join, 20. And every tribe of savage monsters dire. In magic chains to bind, through mad desire. Come, Cyprus-born, and to my prayer incline. Whether exalted in the heavens you shine. Or pleased in Syria's temple to preside, 25. Or o'er Egyptian plains thy car to guide. Fashioned of gold. And near its sacred flood. Fertile and famed to fix thy blessed abode. Or if rejoicing in the azure shores. Near where the sea with foaming billows roars, 30. The circling choirs of mortals, thy delight. Or beauteous nymphs, with eyes cerulean bright. Pleased by the dusty banks renowned of old. To drive thy rapid. Two-yacht car of gold. Or if in Cyprus with thy mother fair, 35. Where married females praise thee every year. And beauteous virgins in the chorus join. Adonis pure to sing and the divine. Come, all attractive to my prayer inclined. For thee, I call, with holy, reverent mind. 40. To Adonis. The fumigation from aromatics. Much nomed, and best of demons, hear my prayer. The desert loving, decked with tender hair. Joy to diffuse, by all desert is thine. Much formed, ubulous, aliment divine. Female and male, all charming to the sight, 5. Adonis ever flourishing and bright. At stated periods doomed to set and rise. With splendid lamp, the glory of the skies. 116. Two-horned and lovely, reverent with tears. Of beauteous form, adorned with copious hairs. 10. Rejoicing in the chase, all graceful power. Sweet plant of Venus, love's delightful flower. Descended from the secret bed divine. Of lovely-haired, infernal Proserpine. 'Tis thine to think in Tartarus profound, 15. And shine again through heavens illustrious round. With beauteous temporal orb restored to sight. Come, with earth's fruits, and in these flames delight. To the terrestrial Hermes. The fumigation from Storax. Hermes I call, whom fate decrees to dwell. In the dire path which leads to deepest hell. O Bakshik Hermes, progeny divine. Of Dionysius, parent of the vine. And of celestial Venus Paphian queen. 5. Dark eyelashed goddess of a lovely mien. Who constant wanderest through the sacred feats. Where hell's dread empress, Proserpine, retreats. To wretched souls the leader of THC way. When fate decrees, to regions void of day. 10. Thine is the wand which causes sleep to fly. Or lulls to slumrouse rest the weary eye. For Proserpine through Tartarus dark and wide. Gave thee forever flowing souls to guide. Come, blessed power the sacrifice attend. 15. And grant our mystic works a happy end. To Cupid, or Love. The fumigation from aromatics. I call great Cupid, source of sweet delight. Holy and pure, and lovely to the sight. Darting, and winged, impetuous fierce desire. With gods and mortals playing, wandering fire. Cautious, and twofold, keeper of the keys 5. Of heaven and earth, the air, and spreading seas. Of all that Ceres' fertile realms contains. By which all-parent goddess life sustains. Or dismal Tartarus is doomed to keep. Widely extended, or the sounding, deep. 10. For thee, all nature's various realms obey. Who are you else alone, with universal sway? Come, blessed power, regard these mystic fires. And far avert, unlawful mad desires. To the fates. The fumigation from aromatics. Daughters of darkling night, much nommed, draw near. Infinite fates, and listen to my prayer. Who in the heaven ly lake, where waters white 117. Burst from a fountain hid in depths of night. And through a dark and stony cavern glide. 5. A cave profound, invisible, abide. From whence, wide coursing round the boundless earth. Your power extends to those of mortal birth. To men with hope elated, trifling, gay. A race presumptuous, born but to decay. 10. Whose life 'tis yours in darkness to conceal. To sense impervious, in a purple veil. When through the fatal plain they joyful ride. In one great car, opinion for their guide. Till each completes his heaven-appointed round 15. At justice, hope, and care's concluding bound. The terms absolved, prescribed by ancient law. Of power immense, and just without a flaw. For fate alone with vision unconfined. Surveys the conduct of the mortal kind. 20. Fate is Jove's perfect and eternal eye. For Jove and fate our every deed descry. Come, gentle powers, well-born, benignant, famed. Atropos, Lachesis, and Clotho nommed. Unchanged, aerial, wandering in the night. 25. Restless, invisible to mortal fight. Fates all-producing all-destroying here. Regard the incense and the holy prayer. Propitious listen to these rites inclined. And far avert distress with placid mind. 30. To the Graces. The fumigation from storax. Hear me, illustrious Graces, mighty nommed. From Jove descended and Eunomia famed. Talia, and Aglaia fair and bright. And blessed Euphrosyne whom joys delight. Mothers of mirth, all lovely to the view. 5. Pleasure abundant pure belongs to you. Various, forever flourishing and fair. Desired by mortals. Much invoked in prayer. Circling, darky wide, delightful to mankind. Come, and your mystics bless with bounteous mind. To Nemesis. A hymn. Nemesis I call, Almighty Queen. By whom the deeds of mortal life are seen. Eternal, much revered, of boundless sight. Alone rejoicing in the just and right. Changing the counsels of the human breast. 5. Forever various, rolling without rest. To every mortal is thy influence known. And men beneath thy righteous bondage groan. For every thought within the mind concealed is to thy fight perspicuously revealed. 10. The soul unwilling reason to obey. By lawless passion are you held, thy eyes survey. All to see, hear, and rule, O power divine. Whose nature equity contains, is thine. Come, blessed, holy goddess, hear my prayer. 15. And make thy mystic's life, thy constant care. Give aid benignant in the needful hour. And strength abundant to the reasoning power. And far avert the dire, unfriendly race. Of counsels impious, arrogant, and base. 20. To justice. The fumigation from frankincense. The piercing eye of justice bright, I sing, 118. Plagued by the throne of Heaven's Almighty King. Perceiving thence, with vision unconfined, the life and conduct of the human kind. To thee, revenge and punishment belong. 5. Chastising every deed, unjust and wrong. Whose power alone, dissimilars can join. And from equality of truth combine. For all the ill, persuasion can inspire. When urging bad designs, with counsel dire. 10. 'Tis thine alone to punish. With the race of lawless passions, and incentives base. For thou art ever to the good inclined. And hostile to the men of evil mind. Come, all propitious, and thy suppliant hear. 15. When fate's predestined, final hour draws near. To equity. The fumigation from frankincense. O blessed equity, mankind's delight. Eternal friend of conduct just and right. Abundant, venerable, honored maid. To judgments pure, dispensing constant aid. A stable conscience, and an upright mind. For men unjust, by thee are undermined. Whose souls perverse thy bondage ne'er desire. But more untamed decline thy scourges dire. Harmonious, friendly power, averse to strife. In peace rejoicing, and a stable life. 10. Lovely, loquacious, of a gentle mind. Hating excess, to equal deeds inclined. Wisdom, and virtue of whatever degree. Receive their proper bound alone in thee. Here, goddess equity, the deeds destroy. 15. Of evil men, which human life annoy. That all may yield to thee of mortal birth. Whether supported by the fruits of earth. Or in her kindly fertile bosom found. Or in the depths of marine Jove profound. 20. To law. A hymn. The holy King of gods and men I call. Celestial law, the righteous seal of all. The seal which stamps whatever the earth contains. Nature's firm basis, and the liquid plains. Stable, and starry, of harmonious frame. 5. Preserving laws eternally the same. Thy all-composing power in heaven appears. Connects its frame. And props the starry spheres. And shakes weak envy with tremendous sound. Tossed by thy arm in giddy whirls around. 10. 'Tis thine, the life of mortals to defend. And crown existence with a blessed end. For thy command and alone, of all that lives. Order and rule to every dwelling gives. Ever observant of the upright mind. 15. And of just actions the companion kind. Foe to the lawless, with avenging ire. Their steps involving in destruction dire. Come, bless, abundant power, whom all revere. By all desert, with Favrangi mind draw near. 20. Give me through life, on thee to fix my fight. And ne'er forsake the equal paths of right. To Mars. 119. The fumigation from frankincense. Magnanimous, unconquered, boisterous Mars. In darts rejoicing, and in bloody wars. Fierce and untamed, whose mighty power can make the strongest walls from their foundations shake. Mortal destroying king, defilled with gore. 5. pleased with war's dreadful and tumultuous roar. Thee, human blood, and swords, and spears delight. And the dire ruin of mad savage fight. Stay, furious contests, and avenging strife. Whose works with woe, embitter human life. 10. To lovely Venus, and to Bacchus yield. To Ceres give the weapons of the field. Encourage peace, to gentle works inclined. And give abundance, with benignant mind. To Vulcan 120. The fumigation from frankincense and manna. Strong, mighty Vulcan, bearing splendid light. Unwearied fire, with flaming torrents bright. Strong-handed, deathless, and of art divine. Pure element, a portion of the world is thine. All-taming artist, all-diffusive power. 5. 'Tis thine supreme. All substance to devour. Ether, sun, moon, and stars, light pure and clear. For these thy lucid parts to men appear. To thee, all dwellings, cities, tribes belong. Diffused through mortal bodies bright and strong. 10. Here, blessed power, to holy rites incline. And all propitious on the incense shine. Suppress the rage of fire's unwearied frame. And still preserve our nature's vital flame. To Aesculapius. The fumigation from manna. Great Aesculapius, skilled to heal mankind. All-ruling Paean, and physician kind. Whose arts Medicinal, can alone assuage diseases dire, and stop their dreadful rage. Strong lenient God, regard my suppliant prayer. Bring gentle health, adorned with lovely hair. Convey the means of mitigating pain. And raging, deadly pestilence restrain. O power all flourishing, abundant, bright. Apollo's honored offspring, God of light. 10. Husband of blameless health, the constant foe. Of dread disease the minister of woe. Come, blessed Saviour, and my health defend. And to my life afford a prosperous end. To health. The fumigation from manna. O much desired, prolific, general queen. Hear me, life-bearing, health, of beauteous mien. Mother of all, by thee diseases dire. Of bliss destructive, from our life retire. And every house is flourishing and fair. 5. If with rejoicing aspect thou art there. Each daedal art, thy vigorous force inspires. And all the world thy helping hand desires. Pluto life's bane alone resists thy will. And ever hates thy all-preserving skill. 10. O fertile queen, from thee forever flows. To mortal life from agony repose. And men without thy all-sustaining ease. Find nothing useful, nothing formed to please. Without thy aid, not Pluto's self can thrive. 15. Nor man to much afflicted age arrive. For thou alone of countenance serene. Dost govern all things, universal queen. Assist thy mystics with propitious mind. And far avert disease of every kind. To the Furies 121. The fumigation from aromatics. Vociferous bacchanalian furies, hear. Ye, I invoke, dread powers, whom all revere. Nightly, profound, in secret who retire. Tisiphone, Alecto, and Megara dire. Deep in a cavern merged, involved in night. Near where Styx flows impervious to the sight. Ever attendant on mysterious rites. Furious and fierce, whom fate's dread law delights. Revenge and sorrows dire to you belong. Hid in a savage veil, severe and strong. 10. Terrific virgins, who forever dwell. Endued with various forms, in deepest hell. Aerial, and unseen by humankind. And swiftly coursing, rapid as the mind. In vain the sun with winged refulgence bright. 15. In vain the moon, far darting milder light. Wisdom and virtue may attempt in vain. And pleasing, art, our transport to obtain. Unless with these you readily conspire. And far avert your all-destructive ire. 20. The boundless tribes of mortals you descry, and justly rule with right's impartial eye. Come, snaky-haired, fates many-formed, divine. Suppress your rage, and to our rights incline. To the Furies. The fumigation from aromatics. Hear me, illustrious Furies, mighty named. Terrific powers, for prudent counsel famed. Holy and pure, from Jove terrestrial born. And Proserpine, whom lovely locks adorn. Whose piercing sight, with vision unconfined, 5. Surveys the deeds of all the impious kind. On fate attendant. Punishing the race. With wrath severe, of deeds unjust and base. Dark-colored queens, whose glittering eyes, are bright. With dreadful, radiant, life-destroying, light, 10. Eternal rulers, terrible and strong. To whom revenge, and tortures dire belong. Fatal and horrid to the human sight. With snaky tresses wandering in the night. Either approach, and in these rites rejoice, 15. For ye, I call, with holy, suppliant voice. To Melano. The fumigation from aromatics. Call Melano, saffron-veiled, terrene. Who from infernal Pluto's sacred queen. Mixed with Saturnian Jupiter, arose. Near where Cocytus' mournful river flows. When under Pluto's semblance, Jove divine 5. Deceived with guileful arts dark Proserpine. Hence, partly black thy limbs and partly white. From Pluto dark, from Jove ethereal, bright. Thy colored members, men by night inspire. When seen in spectred forms with terrors dire. 10. Now darkly visible, involved in night. Perspicuous now they meet the fearful fight. Terrestrial queen expel wherever found. The soul's mad fears to earth's remotest bound. With holy aspect on our incense shrine, 15. And bless thy mystics, and the rites divine. To Fortune. The fumigation from frankincense. Approach strong fortune, with propitious mind. And rich abundance, to my prey are inclined. Placid, and gentle Trivia, mighty named, 122. Imperial Dien, born of Pluto famed. Mankind's unconquered, endless praise is thine, 5. Sepulchral, widely wandering power divine. In thee, our various mortal life is found. And some from thee high copious wealth abound. While others mourn thy hand averse to bless. In all the bitterness of deep distress. 10. B.C. present, Goddess, to thy votary kind. And give abundance with benignant mind. To the demon, or genius. The fumigation from frankincense. The mighty ruling, demon dread, I call. Mild Jove, life-giving, and the source of all. Great Jove, much wandering, terrible and strong. To whom revenge and tortures dire belong. Mankind from thee, in plenteous wealth abound, 5. When in their dwellings joyful thou art found. Or pass through life afflicted and distressed. The needful means of bliss by thee suppressed. 'Tis thine alone endued with boundless might. To keep the keys of sorrow and delight. 10. O holy, blessed Father, hear my prayer. Disperse the seeds of life-consuming care. With favoring mind the sacred rites attend. And grant my days a glorious, blessed end. To Leucothea. The fumigation from aromatics. I call Leucothea, of great Cadmus born. And Bacchus nurse, whom ivy leaves adorn. Here, powerful goddess, in the mighty deep. Wide and profound, thy ration doomed to keep. In waves rejoicing, guardian of mankind. 5. For ships from thee alone deliverance find. Amidst the fury of unstable main. When art no more avail, and strength is vain. When rushing billows with tempestuous ire. O'erwhelm the mariner in ruin dire, 10. Thou hear'st, with pity touched, his suppliant prayer. Resolved his life to succor and to spare. Be ever present, goddess. In distress. Waft ships along with prosperous success. Thy mystics through the stormy sea defend, 15. And safe conduct them to their destined end. To Palemon. The fumigation from Manna. O nursed with Dionysius, doomed to keep thy dwelling in the widely spreading deep. With joyful aspect to my prayer incline. Propitious come, and bless the rites divine. Through earth and sea thy ministers attend. 5. And from old ocean's stormy waves defend. For ships their safety ever owe to thee. Who wand rest with them through the raging sea. Come, guardian power, whom mortal tribes desire. And far avert the deep's destructive ire. 10. To the Muses. The fumigation from frankincense. Daughters of Jove, dire sounding and divine 123. Renowned Pyrian, sweetly speaking 9. To those whose breasts your sacred furies fire. Much formed, the objects of supreme desire. Sources of blameless virtue to mankind, 5. Who form to excellence the youthful mind. Who nurse the soul, and give her to descry the paths of right with reason's steady eye. Commanding queens who lead to sacred light. The intellect refined from error's night. 10. And to mankind each holy right disclose. For mystic knowledge from your nature flows. Clio, and Erato, who charms the sight. With the Euterpe ministering delight. Talia flourishing, Polymena fanned, 15. Melpomene from skill in music nommed. Terpsichore, Urania heven ly bright. With thee 124 who gavest me to behold the light. Come, venerable, various, powers divine. With favoring aspect on your mystics shine, 20. Bring glorious, ardent, lovely, fam desire. And warm my bosom with your sacred fire. To Mnemosyne, or the goddess of memory 125. The fumigation from frankincense. The consort I invoke of Jove divine. Source of the holy, sweetly speaking 9. Free from oblivion of the fallen mind. By whom the soul with intellect is joined. Reason's increase, and thought to thee belong, 5. All-powerful, pleasant, vigilant, and strong. 'Tis thine. To waken from lethargic rest. All thoughts deposited within the breast. And not neglecting, vigorous to excite. The mental eye from dark oblivion's night. 10. Come, blessed power, thy mystics re-wake. To holy rites, and Lethe's fetters break. To Aurora. The fumigation from manna. Hear me, O goddess. Whose emerging ray leads on the broad refulgence of the day. Blushing Aurora, whose celestial light beams on the world with reddening splendors bright. Angel of Titan, whom with constant round, 5. Thy orient beams recall from night profound. Labor of every kind to lead is thine. Of mortal life the minister divine. Mankind in the eternally delight. And none presumes to shun thy beauteous sight. 10. Soon as thy splendors break the bands of rest. And eyes unclose with pleasing sleep oppressed. Men, reptiles, birds, and beasts with general voice. And all the nations of the deep, rejoice. For all the culture of our life is thine. 15. Come, blessed power. And to these rites incline. Thy holy light increase, and unconfined. Diffuse its radiance on thy mystic's mind. To Themis. The fumigation from frankincense. Illustrious Themis, of celestial birth. Thee I invoke, young blossom of the earth. 126. Beauteous-eyed virgin, first from thee alone. Prophetic oracles to men were known. Give end from the deep recesses of the fane 5. In sacred Pytho, where renowned you reign. From thee, Apollo's oracles arose. And from thy power his inspiration flows. Honored by all, of form divinely bright. Majestic Virgin, wandering in the night. 10. Mankind from thee first learnt initial rites. And Bacchus nightly choirs thy soul delights. For holy honors to disclose is thine. With all the culture of the powers divine. Be present, Goddess, to my prayer inclined. And bless the mystic rites with favoring mind. To the north wind. The fumigation from frankincense. Boreas, whose wintry blasts, terrific, tear. The bosom of the deep surrounding air. Cold icy power, approach, and favoring blow. And Thrace a wild desert exposed to snow. The misty station of the air dissolve. 5. With pregnant clouds, whose frames in shores resolve. Serenely temper all within the sky. And wipe from moisture. Ether's beauteous eye. To the west wind. The fumigation from frankincense. Essay-born, aerial, blowing from the west. Sweet gales, who give to wearied labor rest. Vernal and grassy, and of gentle found. To ships delightful, through the sea profound. For these, impelled by you with gentle force. 5. Pursue with prosperous fate their destined course. With blameless gales regard my suppliant prayer. Zephyrs unseen, light-winged, and formed from air. To the south wind. The fumigation from frankincense. Wide coursing gales, whose lightly leaping feet. With rapid wings the air's wet bosom beat. Approach benevolent, swift whirling powers. With humid clouds the principles of flores. For flowery clouds are portioned to your care. 5. To send on earth from all surrounding air. Bear, blessed powers, these holy rites attend. And fruitful rains on earth all parents send. To ocean. The fumigation from aromatics. Ocean I call, whose nature ever flows. From whom at first both gods and men arose. Sire incorruptible, whose waves surround. 127. And earth's concluding mighty circle bound. Hence every river, hence the spreading sea. 5. And earth's pure bubbling fountains spring from thee. Here, mighty fire, for boundless bliss is thine. Whose waters purify the powers divine. Earth's friendly limit, fountain of the pole. Whose waves wide spreading and circumfluent roll. Approach benevolent, with placid mind. And be for ever to thy mystics kind. To Vesta. The fumigation from aromatics. Daughter of Saturn, venerable dame. The seat containing of unwearied flame. 128. In sacred rites these ministers are thine. Mystics much blessed, holy, and divine. In thee, the gods have fixed place. 5. Strong, stable, basis of the mortal race. Eternal, much formed ever florid queen. Laughing and blessed, and of lovely mien. 129. Accept these rites, accord each just desire. And gentle health, and needful good inspire. To sleep. The fumigation from a poppy. Sleep, king of gods, and men of mortal birth. Sovereign of all sustained by Mother Earth. For thy dominion is supreme alone. O'er all extended, and by all things known. 'Tis thine all bodies with benignant mind. 5. In other bands than those of brass to bind. Tamer of cares, to weary toil repose. From whom sweet solace in affliction flows. Thy pleasing, gentle chains preserve the soul. And e'en the dreadful cares of death control. 10. For death and lethe with oblivious stream. Mankind thy genuine brothers justly deem. With favoring aspect to my prayer incline. And save thy mystics in their works divine. To the divinity of dreams. The fumigation from aromatics. Thee I invoke, blessed power of dreams divine. Angel of future fates, swift wings are thine. Great source of oracles to humankind. When stealing soft, and whispering to the mind. Through sleep's sweet silence and the gloom of night. 5. Thy power awakes intellectual fight. To silent souls the will of heaven relates. And silently reveals their future fates. Forever friendly to the upright mind. Sacred and pure, to holy rites inclined. 10. For these with pleasing hope thy dreams inspire. Bliss to anticipate, which all desire. Thy visions manifest of fate disclose. What methods best may mitigate our woes. Reveal what rites the gods immortal please. 15. And what the means their anger to appease. Forever tranquil is the good man's end. Whose life, thy dreams admonish and defend. But from the wicked turn averse to bless. Thy form unseen, the angel of distress. 20. No means to cheek approaching ill they find. Pensive with fears, and to the future blind. Come, blessed power, the signatures reveal. Which heaven's decrees mysteriously conceal. Signs only present to the worthy mind. 25. Nor omens ill disclose of monstrous kind. To death. The fumigation from manna. Hear me, O death, whose empire unconfined extends to mortal tribes of every kind. On thee, the portion of our time depends. Whose absence lengthens life, whose presence ends. Thy sleep perpetual bursts the vivid folds. 5. By which the soul, attracting body holds. 130. Common to all of every sex and age. For naught escapes thy all-destructive rage. Not youth itself thy clemency can gain. Vigorous and strong, by the untimely slain. 10. In thee, the end of nature's works is known. In thee, all judgment is absolved alone. No suppliant arts thy dreadful rage control. No vows revoke the purpose of thy soul. O blessed power regard my ardent prayer. 15. And human life to age abundant spare. The end.